Chapter 61. Roar. A shocking roar echoed through the sky. A pure white giant python, with scales all over its body as hard as steel, glowing with a cold silver light. Its erect body was as tall as a dozen floors, and its body was as thick as 8 people could hug it. With a sweep of the giant tail, rows of buildings collapsed and instantly turned into ashes, dissipating between the sky and the earth. Undoubtedly, it was Yuya who caused such a big commotion. Opposite Nato, there was a Gamabunta who was not inferior to him in size. His movements were agile and his body was light. He carried Jiraiya and jumped easily to avoid Nato's giant tail attack. Gamabunta drew out the tachi from his waist and made an iai slashing stance. Cut! Accompanied by a murderous shout, Gamabunta's huge body fell from the sky, the sharp sword light streaked across the sky, there was a faint whistling sound, and the Tuhao hijab slashed towards Yuya. What a wonderful night! Despite his huge size, his movements are not stagnant at all. Instead, he is as flexible as a swimming fish. He stretches and contracts his body and directly burrows into the ground with his talent of intermediate earth affinity. Tear. The 4-meter-long tachi fell across the sky, like a hot knife cutting into butter, directly cutting a knife mark 1 meter long and half a meter wide on the ground. Before Gamabunta could stabilize his body, Kisame's prepared attack suddenly came. Water escape. Great waterfall water rushes into the waves. Kisame pressed one hand on the ground, and the surging chakra in his body flowed out. The huge chakra turned into a steady stream of river water, and instantly formed an endless flow, covering the houses, roads, and mud. In the blink of an eye, a land with a radius of 1 mile turned into a lake. Under the sunlight, the lake surface sparkles and is as calm as a mirror. Kisame stepped on the lake and looked at Jiraiya and Gamabunta with a sneer on his lips. Looking at the lake with a radius of 1 kilometer, Jiraiya's face flashed with a hint of solemnity, and he said solemnly, "What a huge amount of chakra this is! This Kisame is indeed the terrifying existence known as the tailless beast among the 7 ninja swordsmen." Even so, Jiraiya's eyes were full of fighting spirit. Fighting with heaven is endless fun, fighting with people is endless fun. Taiwan, come on! Hearing Jiraiya's fighting words, Gamabunta's face was expressionless, as if he had returned to the time when he and Jiraiya were fighting in the Ninja World War, and there was a fire burning in his heart. Bang! The water in the lake splashed, creating waves as high as 3 meters high. Gamabunta shot out like a cannonball, and the sword in his hand slashed diagonally towards Kisame. Tear! Kisame was cut in half without any surprise. However, Gamabunta noticed something was wrong with his hand, and his expression suddenly changed. However, Kisame's cut body turned into 2 masses of water, splashing out and blending into the lake below. Jiraiya's expression also changed drastically. Having experienced many battles, he was keenly aware of one thing. This is a trap. Water escape. Water prison technique. From the depths of the lake, a loud shout suddenly came. Immediately afterwards, the lake water rippled violently, as if boiling water in a kettle was boiling. A heavy column of water spurted out and sprinkled high into the sky. Then, under Kisame's control, it was about to turn into a prison cage, trapping Gamabunta and himself. Leia is trapped inside. But the water prison technique is okay against humans, and can quickly form a prison, but for Gamabunta's huge body, it seems to be powerless, and the speed is a beat slow. Naturally, Jiraiya and Gamabunta will not sit still and wait for death. Fire escape. Fire bomb. Jiraiya opened his mouth and fired a dozen fire bombs with a diameter of 1 meter like a machine gun fire, which landed in the surrounding water columns. Water can extinguish fire, but when the flame is strong enough, water can also be extinguished. A large amount of water columns were destroyed, and curls of green smoke emerged, blocking the sight of one person and one toad. Because their vision was blocked, they didn't notice that a large whirlpool was rolling up in the lake behind them. Immediately afterwards, a huge snake head as big as a house poked out from the whirlpool. While Gamabunta was busy cutting the water prison, Yuya suddenly ejected from the lake, like a vine, like an iron hoop, coiling around Gamabunta's body. On the body, it seems to be tied into a big rice dumpling. Oops! By the time Gamabunta reacted, most of his body was already entangled with Nato, and a huge snake head was close at hand, giving it a teasing look. "You're a small boy, you still want to deal with me?" Nato opened his bloody mouth, his fangs exposed, and his dark and deep throat was clearly visible. The fishy wind blew into his nostrils, causing Gamabunta to frown. Just when Yuya wanted to eat Gamabunta's head in one bite, Jiraiya suddenly jumped up, like a rock spreading its wings, and landed on Yuyi's forehead. He squeezed his fingers tightly and held a brilliant blue chakra sphere. Raise Nan! Jiraiya shouted, and the raised Nan in his hand hit Nato's forehead without any politeness. Originally, Yuya was very confident and could resist. But the results proved that senior cage-level ninjas, especially Jiraiya, a strong man who has been famous for many years, did not live up to their reputation in vain when they went all out. Boom! The silver-like scales on his forehead were as fragile as tofu skin, and were directly overturned by the raised Nan, hitting the snake meat underneath. As if being hit by a rocket launcher, Yuyi felt a confusion in his head, and lost consciousness in an instant, and the huge snake head as big as a house fell backwards. After 3 seconds, Yuyi regained consciousness, and couldn't help but surging blood, and a mouthful of blood turned into a blood arrow and sprayed out. Hiss! Yuyi screamed in pain, and the sound shook the 9 heavens. Realizing that Jiraiya was not easy to deal with, the snake body coiled around Gamabunta immediately retracted, and the huge body escaped underground, ready to choose another time to kill the toad again. What a pity, just a little bit short. Kisame, who was staying at the bottom of the lake, saw this scene and secretly said it was a pity. If Yuyi had succeeded in his attack just now and killed Gamabunta first, he would have been able to take advantage of the situation to trap Jiraiya in the water prison, and then he would be at his mercy. Unfortunately, the chess was one step short, and Jiraiya finally broke the trap. Kisame was a ninja who had experienced many battles. He shook his head slightly, suppressed his emotions, and immediately launched the next round of offensive. Water escape. 5 sharks. Kisame slapped the lake with one hand, and 5 sharks with a body length of 2 meters, formed by the lake water, appeared. They had a row of sharp teeth, swung their tails, and sneaked under the lake to approach Gamabunta. Chapter 62. In the depths of the lake under Gamabunta's feet, several dark shadows were swaying faintly, stirring the lake water. Jiraiya repelled Yuyi with one move, returned to the top of Gamabunta's head, and asked with concern. Bunta, are you not injured? Gamabunta was still a little frightened, and touched his head still on his neck. When he thought of Yuyi's bloody mouth, he suddenly felt uneasy. Gamabunta suppressed the horror in his heart and said with a forced smile. Fortunately, Jiraiya, you repelled that guy in time, otherwise I would not be able to save my head. Hearing that Gamabunta was fine, Jiraiya's expression eased a little. Because the fire burned water before, breaking the water prison technique, there was still a thick fog nearby, which did not disperse, hindering the vision, and it was hazy everywhere and could not see clearly. Jiraiya asked while observing the surroundings vigilantly. I saw that white giant python just now, it was as strong as the 10,000 snakes, why haven't I heard of it before? Gamabunta held the sword tightly in his hand and said embarrassedly. How should I know? If I knew that guy was so strong, I wouldn't be so careless just now. Just as they were talking to the toad, a splashing sound suddenly sounded on the calm lake. Then, 5 sharks with light bodies and ferocious faces jumped out of the water and bit Jiraiya from 5 different directions. If an ordinary ninja was suddenly attacked, he would definitely panic. Even some senior ninjas would have a hard time dealing with sharks coming from 5 different directions. However, the one here is not an ordinary person, but Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas who once dominated the ninja world. Ninjutsu. The lion's hair technique. Jiraiya shouted in a deep voice. His messy white hair was as free and easy as a lion's mane, but as tough as steel, scattered but not messy. The hair was wild, spreading in all directions, like a sharp spear, directly piercing the 5 sharks. Snap! 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 The 5 sharks splashed and shot, turning into water droplets, floating in the air. Then, from the depths of the lake, Kisame's voice came again. Water escape. Water prison technique. In an instant, the water droplets rushed forward like beans drying in the sun, crackling and clacking, trying to form a water prison and trap Jiraiya. Seeing this, Jiraiya's face was gloomy, and he cursed. Is this guy annoying? He uses this trick again. The water prison technique has no killing ability, but it brings out the disgusting characteristics of water escape to the extreme. As long as the caster has enough chakra, he can create an unbreakable prison and trap people inside. Jiraiya certainly would not be willing to be trapped, and he kept spitting out flame bombs from his mouth, hoping to destroy the water prison again. And at this moment, Yi, who had been lurking underground, launched a fierce attack again. Swish! A spike like a mountain peak rose from the ground, trying to perform the dirty 1000-year killing and penetrate Gamabunta from under his seat. Gamabunta had been with Jiraiya for so many years, so he knew the disgusting thing about the 1000 years of death. His expression suddenly changed, and his lower body tightened. He squatted down with his legs, and suddenly jumped up like a spring, avoiding the protruding peak far away. Good opportunity! Seeing this scene, Yi, who was hiding under the lake, had a gleam in his eyes. Gamabunta was in the air and couldn't use his power, which was a good opportunity for Yi to attack. Boom! The lake water exploded instantly, and a white giant python like a pillar suddenly rose into the air, opened its bloody mouth, and bit towards Gamabunta's waist. With Yi's terrifying bite force now, I'm afraid that in the next moment, Gamabunta will be bitten in half. Gamabunta had been fighting with the psychic beasts of the Ryokai cave for many years, especially its old rival, Manabu, who particularly liked this sneak attack method. How could he not know the horror? Gamabunta's face changed suddenly. Now Jiraiya was busy escaping from the water prison, so he had to rely on himself. Water escape. Iron cannonball. Gamabunta took a deep breath, his abdomen swelled up, as if he was pregnant for 10 months, and then he opened his mouth and sprayed a ball of water cannon with a diameter of 3 meters directly at Yi's face. Yi's eyes flashed with a fierce look, but he did not avoid it at all. He also opened his mouth and sprayed a ball of fireballs of the same size directly at Yi. Bang! Water and fire are incompatible, and they exploded in the air in an instant, with green smoke curling up. Yi's huge snake head broke through the diffuse mist, and his hideous face was reflected in Gamabunta's eyes, making him speechless. What kind of hatred and resentment is this? Fortunately, at this critical moment, although Jiraiya was still stuck with the water prison, he also freed his hands. Bunta, cooperate with me. Gamabunta had been fighting with Jiraiya for many years and had long cultivated an invisible tacit understanding. He immediately contracted his abdomen and suddenly flipped his huge body in the air, facing Yi with his back. Jiraiya's feet were wrapped with chakra, and he stuck to Gamabunta's back steadily, so as not to be thrown from the air. Then he quickly formed seals with both hands, suddenly pressed on Gamabunta's back, and shouted. Spirit summoning technique. Technique to crush vendors. Bang! Accompanied by a burst of green smoke. A toad holding a huge harpoon and carrying a black gold iron shield suddenly fell from the sky, like a mountain pressing down on his head, and directly pressed Yi down. Worry! He actually called for help. Yi was so angry that he jumped up and down, but his old strength was gone. Before his new strength was born, it was difficult to turn around at high altitude. Boom! A toad and a white python fell down like a meteor. The surface of the lake was turbulent, directly setting off large waves more than 10 meters high. The huge snow-white waves crashed down like sand in the shore, and the rolling water droplets flew like rain on banana trees. Before the confused toad Jian could recover, Yi's giant tail swiped, carrying a huge force, and directly knocked it away. Bang! The lake surface once again set off a huge wave. The toad was lying healthily at the bottom of the lake, eyes open blankly, looking left and right, as if saying, Who am I, where am I, what do I do? Toad Jian touched the back of his head and sighed. Sure enough, I'm really too stupid. After repelling Nato's sneak attack again, Jiraiya broke through the water prison at the same time and pierced Gamabunta's back like a nail. Several times, he was attacked by Nato and Kisame together. Although they were repelled almost every time, Jiraiya still looked calm and said, Wenta, it's time to give this giant white python some color. A hint of excitement flashed in Gamabunta's eyes, and he had been unhappy with Nato for a long time. Clear. Chapter 63. Under the lake. Nato came not far from Kisame and whispered. This stalemate is not an option. Once it drags on for a long time, I'm afraid it will attract the attention of Konoha village. If it attracts a large number of Konoha ninjas, it will be troublesome. Let's find an opportunity later and kill that Gamabunta first. Kisame glanced at Yuya thoughtfully, and naturally had no objection to his proposal. In fact, Kisame, like Uchiha Itachi, has never used his full strength. He just keeps using the water prison technique to create offensive opportunities for Nato and test Nato's details without leaving any trace. Even though Kisame has a ferocious face and strong muscles, and you might think that he is the kind of person who doesn't use his brain. In fact, he is very smart. Of course, Kisame is at least a little stronger than Uchiha Itachi, at least he can contribute, although not much. As for Uchiha Itachi, Nato said that since the beginning of the battle, the opponent had disappeared, and he probably went to find Sasuke. Kisame grinned, revealing a row of sharp teeth, and said, "You can go ahead and do it. I will help you contain the other psychic beast summoned by Jiraiya." This basically means that Kisame wants to continue paddling. The corners of Yu Yi's mouth twitched slightly, feeling quite a headache. It's a bit tiring to communicate with these old ninjas. It's almost impossible to take advantage. He originally thought of letting Kisame take the lead, but the other party didn't buy it at all and was very slippery. Sometimes Yu Yi wonders why when people travel through the world of Naruto, they lower their IQ and meet everyone who is stupid or falls in love with beautiful women. When it was his turn, he would be reborn as a snake. The strong men he met were either Orochimaru or Banshee, or they were dealing with the Akatsuki organization, and all of them were human spirits. "I'm so tired." With a slight sigh in his heart, Yu Yi's face showed no expression, his figure escaped from Kisame's sight. Although Kisame was suffering from serious strokes, he still had professional ethics. He said he was helping to contain him, but he really meant it. Water release. Water dragon technique. A 3-meter-high water column rises from the lake. Amidst the splashing water, the water column winds in the air and twists into a vivid water dragon, more than 3 meters long. It shines with crystal dazzling light in the sun and pounces on the toad with its teeth and claws. Healthy. Toad Takeru holds a giant harpoon in one hand and carries a shield behind his back. Seeing this, Toad Jian was not afraid at all. He stabbed the giant harpoon straight in his hand and immediately started fighting with the water dragon. He couldn't be distracted. While Toma Takeru was being restrained, Yu Ye suddenly rushed out of the lake and bit Gamabunta again. Being attacked again and again by Nato, Jiraiya, and Gamabunta had already held their breath in their hearts. At this time, seeing Nato facing the enemy head-on, Jiraiya couldn't help but sneered and said, "Just in time, it saves me the trouble of making a special trip to find you." Gamabunta and Jiraiya fought in a tacit understanding. There was no need to say anything. They opened their mouths and took a deep breath. Their abdomens swelled up as if they were blowing up a balloon. You could faintly see the protruding veins on the skin, twisting like little snakes. Move. Ninja technique. Toad oil bomb. Although the words contained the word bullet, the toad oil sprayed from Gamabunta's mouth did not look like a bullet at all. Instead, it was like a landslide. The brown, turbid, sticky liquid suddenly sprayed overwhelmingly towards Nato. The smell of oil hits your nostrils instantly. At this moment, Jiraiya had a clear idea and opened his mouth at the same time. Fire escape. Fire bomb. Balls of scorching flames swept across and fell on the brown and turbid toad oil in front, immediately igniting them all and turning into a prairie fire. Its momentum was raging, vast, and a monstrous heat wave spread across the sky. Ninja technique. Toad oil flame bomb. Not far away, Uchiha Itachi was exchanging feelings with Sasuke, and suddenly he felt an extremely uncomfortable wave of heat coming out, as if he was about to throw people into a furnace and turn everything into ashes. Uchiha Itachi suddenly looked up and saw red flames that burned half of the sky falling from the sky, as if they were going to burn Nato to death. The hot aura that Uchiha Itachi felt at this time was overflowing from the red flames, burning fiercely. Even though the distance was nearly 1,000 meters, it was still a bit unbearable. It is conceivable that the people shrouded in this red flames, how much pressure will Yu Ye bear? What a powerful fire escape, I'm afraid even I have to take it seriously. Is something going to happen to you yet? Seeing this, Uchiha Itachi's expression changed, uncertain. Uchiha Itachi has already asked from Sasuke that he has signed an unequal contract with Nato, and both will be prosperous and suffer losses. Once Nato dies, Sasuke will also die. That's why he suddenly became worried about Yu Ye. Seeing Uchiha Itachi's shocked expression, Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest, curled his lips, and said coldly and proudly, "The Lord is the incarnation of flame, how can an ordinary person like you predict it?" Sasuke's words were full of mindless reverence for Nato, like a fanatical believer. This was due to the subtle influence of the slavery contract, and secondly, it was because Nato rescued Sasuke from the abyss of despair and gave him a new life. In Sasuke's mind, Nato is a god, an omnipotent god. Seeing the fanatical look in Sasuke's eyes, Itachi Uchiha's expression froze and he felt quite troubled by it. Like an infinite flame, the temperature was so high that even the air was distorted, like a layer of true sun fire rolled out, overwhelming towards Yuya. However, to Jiraiya and Gamabunta's surprise, Nato didn't seem to see it. No, it should be said that Nato turned a blind eye to the red flames in front of him. Yuyi's huge snake body was like a speeding train, crashing into the burning red flames. Boom! The horrifying noise echoed in the air, and in Jiraiya's shocked eyes, Yuyi's head, as big as a house, broke through the red flames intact, opened his bloody mouth, opened his powerful jaw, and bit into it. On Gamabunta's neck. Seeing this scene, Jiraiya's pupils suddenly shrank into needle-like shapes and said angrily, "Bastard! How dare you!" Yuya gave him a playful look in return, and then, under Jiraiya's eyes that almost wanted to burst into flames, Yuya made a clicking sound in his mouth, and blood spattered everywhere, as if a beautiful flower bloomed in the air. Twara! Woo! Gamabunta covered the big hole with one hand and wanted to say something, but unfortunately he made a sound similar to a whimper due to the leakage of wind. The look in his eyes quickly dimmed, and his body, as huge as a mountain, collapsed in an instant. Bunta! The air echoed with Jiraiya's wails of annoyance and regret. Chapter 64. Jiraiya watched Gamabunta's body fall into the lake, stirring up heavy waves. His heart and lungs seemed to be torn apart, like 1,000 knives cutting his flesh. The pain was heart-wrenching. Pain! 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 At this moment, Jiraiya's mind flashed through fragments of memories like slides, from the first time he signed the summoning beast contract with Gamabunta, to the one and the toad galloping on the battlefield, laughing at the ninja world together, and then to Gamabunta's huge body collapsed. Time seemed to be frozen at the last moment. Afterwards, Jiraiya stared at the culprit with resentment, the white giant python that bit Bunta's neck, and said word by word with blood in his voice, hatefully, "I want you to be buried with Bunta." Yuyi was not afraid at all, grinned at Jiraiya, his face was ferocious, and said, "I'll wait for you here." Fighting head-on, not polite. A strong smell of gunpowder spread in the air. Just when Jiraiya's attention was focused on Yuyi, Kisame emerged from the water, all wet, and appeared behind Jiraiya like a ghost. Kisame is really a shady old man. He waited until Yuyi worked hard to kill Gamabunta before he appeared to pick peaches and grab heads. Taking advantage of Jiraiya's moment of distraction, Kisame picked up Samehada and chopped it down, using all his strength and force to cut Jiraiya in half from head to tail. Hey! A sharp sound of breaking wind came from behind his head, and the sharp wind even cut off a few hairs of Jiraiya. Those who are good at swords must have an indomitable heart. Undoubtedly, Kisame is one of the best. What a Jiraiya! It was such a critical moment, and even the substitute technique was not enough time to use, but Jiraiya was not in a hurry. He suppressed the grief in his heart, shook his shoulders slightly, twisted his waist, and raised his legs. What was he going to do? Not only was Kisame surprised, but even Yuyi was a little confused. At this time, what was he going to do if he didn't dodge? Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. In the surprised eyes of Yuyi and Kisame, Jiraiya turned 180 degrees, treating the big knife above his head as nothing, shaking his thighs, and kicking like a fast-swinging pendulum, kicking Kisame one after another, swishing. Jiraiya's leg speed was amazing, to the point of dazzling. In a short moment of less than a second, Jiraiya kicked Kisame's waist and kidneys 7 times. Snap! 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 Let's not talk about why Jiraiya wanted to kick the kidneys. In the 7 consecutive muffled sounds, Kisame's face changed drastically, and suddenly it was like this. The Samehada in his hand was almost unsteady, and he almost let it go. He just barely slashed towards Jiraiya's shoulder, brushed past him, slashed off a large piece of clothes, revealing a dark and strong shoulder. As expected of Jiraiya. Ordinary people are always confused by his amazing ninjutsu, but forget that his physical skills are amazing. According to the Book of Ninja recorded by Kishimoto, Jiraiya's physical skills data are enough to be on par with Might Guy. If Might Guy does not use the 8 gates, it is unknown who will win. The most important parts of a man are the heart, the little brother, and the kidney. Once one of them is hit, he will lose a layer of skin if he does not die. Yuyi looked at Kisame with pity. A 7-foot man, his kidney was hit 7 times in a row, his sexual happiness is worrying. The speed of punching is obviously faster than the speed of swinging the knife. Jiraiya's close proximity, the advantage is obvious, physical combat, taking the lead. Jiraiya's punches were strong and powerful, like waves hitting the shore, hitting Kisame's face fiercely, and each punch hit the flesh, causing Kisame to feel burning pain. Why did you hit my face? Kisame was also angry, with a cold look in his eyes. Relying on his stubbornness and thick skin, he withstood Jiraiya's turbulent punches and swung the heavy Samehada with great force. The thorny Samehada occasionally scratched Jiraiya's body, leaving blood marks on his body while absorbing the chakra in his body, wearing away his strength bit by bit. After just 1 minute of fighting, Jiraiya clearly noticed that the consumption of chakra in his body was abnormal, which was even greater than the consumption of using an S-level ninjutsu. Jiraiya was so smart that he keenly noticed that something was wrong with the knife in Kisame's hand. A trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes, and he said, "Can your knife absorb chakra?" Kisame grinned and sneered. "Have you been discovered? It's too late." Seeing that Jiraiya was about to retreat when he saw that the situation was not good, Kisame quickly blinked and winked at Yi. Yi's face was strange. "Kisame, you want me to help you contain the enemy?" However, thinking that he still had to rely on the power of the Akatsuki organization to kill the White Snake Sage and could not offend Kisame, Yi immediately suppressed the slight dissatisfaction in his heart. Anyway, the future is long, and it is never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Yi will always have a chance to get back at him. Yi opened his mouth and spit out a long scarlet letter like a bullet, shooting at Jiraiya's head from the side. If Jiraiya is hit, I'm afraid his whole head will splatter like a watermelon. Whoosh! The whistling wind whistled, and Jiraiya shook his head violently, like a lion's rage, and his long hair tightened and hardened, as if it was as hard as steel. It swept the long silver-white hair towards the snake's tongue like a broom. Snap! The snake's tongue was like a halberd, sharp and fierce. Even though Jiraiya's hair was as hard as iron, it was still broken into a thumb-sized hole. However, because of this, Snake Xin was unable to follow up, and the hole he opened was replenished by the long hair that followed. If Yuya had not seen that the situation was not good and quickly retracted Snake Letter, his tongue would have been smashed into slag by the long steel hair like a wolf and tiger. Pity! Seeing that he couldn't get any advantage, Jiraiya secretly spat, and then with a trace of his mind, he shouted angrily at Toad Takeru who was foolishly fighting the water dragon in the distance. "Jian, come here quickly, don't waste time there." Gama Takeru had a silly look on his face, and his brain arc was a bit long. It took him a while to realize it, especially when he saw Gamabunta's body that had been dead for a long time. He then realized what stupid thing he had done and touched the back of his head. Apologetically, said, "Sorry. I'm really too stupid." When Toad Takeru was angry, the giant harpoon was as light as a feather in his hand, and he swung it airtight. After a while, he found an opportunity to kill the water dragon that had been pestering him, and was able to escape and rush to Jiraiya's aid. Snap! 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 Every time Toad Jian stepped on the lake, waves immediately stirred up. It raised its sharp harpoon high and stabbed at Yuya, like a spear coming out like a dragon, with a bit of cold light arriving first, and the whistling wind blowing in his face. Yuya showed disdain and sneered. "I kill your elder brother like a dog, let alone a fool like you." Chapter 65. Yuya twisted his waist to avoid Toad Jian's harpoon. Immediately afterwards, Yuyi's snake tail swung, and a drainage wall rose up on the lake. The huge snake body shot out like a cannonball, as slippery as a loach, and wrapped around the toad body, until it was tied into a big rice dumpling. Even breathing seemed difficult. However, before Nato could make any further moves, reinforcements from Konoha village arrived. "Evil beast, suffer death." With a roar like a violent tiger, a fierce and domineering figure descended from the sky, like an angry dragon's spear, carrying the force of thunder, and shot straight towards Yuyi's head. "Call!" A sharp whistle sounded in the air. When he heard the familiar voice, Yuya suddenly felt bad. He didn't even think about taking care of Toad Jian, and just hid under the ground with his tail between his legs. As soon as Yuya stepped forward, the fierce and domineering figure followed closely. Boom! Like a Scud missile falling straight down, the waves set off by the lake reached a height of 10 meters, and the sound of layers of gas explosions was like the roar of the wind. Even Toad Jian, who was very close at hand, suffered a disaster and was blown away by the sudden aftermath. The center of the lake with a radius of 1 kilometer was directly penetrated by a terrifying force, exposing the moist soil underneath, but wherever there was any shadow of Yuya, it had already run out of bounds. Damn it, it's too late. The speaker is a man with thick black eyebrows, wearing a green vest, with an ordinary face. He is the kind of man who is difficult to recognize in a sea of people, but there is an awe-inspiring righteousness between his eyebrows, which makes people palpitate. He is the blue beast of Konoha, Metkai. Looking at the soil covered with a light layer of moss under his feet, Metkai regretted for the first time why he didn't know any soil escape ninjutsu, but he was actually escaped by that damn white giant python. It can be said that Metkai was deeply impressed by Nato. The first time they met in the Forest of Death, he kicked Yuya to the point of death, so Yuya could only escape by feigning death. At that time, when Metkai saw that he had no life breath, he thought he was dead, which resulted in a catastrophe. Later, when he saw Nato burning the western part of Konoha village, he really regretted it and always felt guilty. So, this time, as soon as Metkai arrived, he directly opened the 8 gates and the 6 gates of Dunjia, intending to finish his work in one battle and directly kill the scourge of Yuya. Unexpectedly, when Yuya realized something was wrong, he ran faster than anyone else, making him grit his teeth in anger. When they saw the reinforcements from the Leaf Village arriving, Kisame and Uchiha Itachi were shocked. They didn't care to continue paddling and watching the show, and stood together. Kisame's eyes flickered. He didn't want to take the blame for abandoning the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki just because of the arrival of reinforcements from the Leaf Village. So, Kisame turned his head and asked Uchiha Itachi, who had been playing soy sauce. Itachi, what should we do next? Uchiha Itachi glanced at Kisame, and with his intelligence, he naturally understood what the other person meant. You've been playing soy sauce for so long, it's time to take action. However, Uchiha Itachi had his own considerations. It's not all because of Sasuke. From Sasuke's mouth, he already knew that Sasuke and Nato signed a slavery contract, and now that something like this happened again, he would not be able to return to Konoha village in the future. For this younger brother, Uchiha Itachi was heartbroken, so he decided to take him back to the Akatsuki organization to see if there was any way to help Sasuke get rid of that damn slavery contract. Uchiha Itachi didn't believe it. In the huge ninja world, there was no way to break the slavery contract. So, it is impossible to take action. Of course, you can't say that. Uchiha Itachi pondered for a moment, then came up with an idea and said. Now that Metkai has arrived as the vanguard, I am afraid that the follow-up army of Konoha village is not far from here. If we continue to stay here, I am afraid that we will be surrounded by the other party. For today's plan, we can only retreat temporarily. Uchiha Itachi spoke in a very orderly manner, leaving the bellicose Kisame unable to find anything to refute. Metkai suddenly became angry when he heard the conversation between the two. Want to run away? Have you asked me? 8 gates of Dunjia. 7 gates open. Accompanied by a roar like a tiger roaring and a dragon roaring, a scene that shocked Uchiha Itachi and Kisame appeared. Metkai's whole body was congested, the blood in his body was roaring, and his muscles and bones were ringing together. Together with the extremely powerful vibration in his heart, it actually formed a deep and thick sound. A blue airflow that was completely different from chakra surged out of Metkai's body, and the atmosphere was torn apart by this blue airflow. From the air around Metkai, there was a crisp sound like broken glass. Click! 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 The lake within a radius of tens of meters under his feet was shaken and shattered by the surging and powerful airflow. The lake sank, and the nearby lake water evaporated rapidly, making it impossible to get close. Yuya hid 500 meters underground, using thermal energy sensing to sense what was happening above. When seeing Metkai use the 7 gates, Yuyi's face turned green. Do you want Mr. Kai to be so ferocious and use his big moves as soon as he comes? For Metkai, Nato can be said to love and hate him. After all, he was my favorite anime character before his rebirth and transmigrator. As for hatred, it goes without saying that every time they meet, they are given a flying kick, and the kind is fatal. No one can resist it. Might Guy was so powerful that even Uchiha Itachi's eyes flashed with a strange color. Is this taijutsu? Although there was a little surprise in his words, Uchiha Itachi could not admit that the other party was stronger than him. As one of the most talented people in the history of the Uchiha family, Uchiha Itachi also had his own pride. No matter how strong the taijutsu is, a genjutsu can solve it. Uchiha Itachi's pupils widened, the black windmill spun rapidly, and the Mangeki Sharingan burst into a strange light. Genjutsu. Tsukuyomi. However, something that shocked Uchiha Itachi happened. The Tsukuyomi, which has always been indestructible, lost its effect just by making Might Guy lose consciousness for a moment. The inhuman body, strong will, and decades of hard training have long forged Might Guy's indomitable willpower. What's more, after opening the 7 gates of the 8 gates of ninjutsu, Might Guy is always suffering from the pain of muscle tearing. All of this makes the effect of Tsukuyomi almost negligible. Might Guy clenched his fists, gathering strength like a bowstring, his muscles bulged, full of visual impact, and the blue airflow that continued to flow out of his body gradually gathered into a white tiger posture. Then, as if a spring was stretched to its limit and suddenly released, a terrifying energy burst out. Day. Tiger. Chapter 66. Yuya hit underground, feeling slightly anxious. Metkai's performance far exceeded his expectations. He had a feeling that if he were to match Metkai with Penumbra's current strength, even if he tried his best, he might be wiped out by Riho in one move. Master Kai is so strong. Good thing. The person facing Metkai now is not him, but Uchiha Itachi, who has temporarily reached an alliance agreement with him. Uchiha Itachi stood upright, with his back like a dragon, and the wind roared, rustling the corners of his clothes. The scarlet Mangeki Sharingan burst out with a strange light, and the chakra in Uchiha Itachi's body flowed out like a river. Susanoo. Crimson-red bones emerged from the void, and they were iron-clad and extremely hard. Immediately afterwards, as a large amount of chakra was invested, the bones were covered with meridians and flesh, and were wrapped in coat-like chakra, forming a fully covered samurai armor. There was a faint brilliance flowing along the armor, as if there was a thin flame flowing inside. Susanoo is as tall as a dozen floors, holding a Juken sword in his right hand and a Yata mirror in his left hand. Majestic and imposing. Both artifacts have their own special effects, but now facing Metkai's Hiratora, the Yata mirror is undoubtedly the most cost-effective. With a thought in Uchiha Itachi's mind, the incorporeal spiritual shield deformed and formed a wall in front of Hiratora. Oh! The roar of tigers in the mountains and forests is deafening. Through the clear Yata mirror, Uchiha Itachi narrowed his eyes. Boom! The day tiger bombarded the Yata mirror, creating a terrifying hurricane that swept across the blue sky, engulfing the sun, and the sandstorm it set off even covered the sky and the sun with magnificent momentum. Click! 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 Uchiha Itachi's expression changed. At the next moment, the Yata mirror, which could rebound physical attacks, opened like a spider web of cracks like broken glass, and then shattered. The Hotora, who had been smaller for several times, continued to lose strength. A hungry tiger pounced out, the terrifying wind cut his face like a knife, and ferociously pounced on Uchiha Itachi. A glint flashed in Uchiha Itachi's eyes. Susanoo held the 10-fist sword in his hand and slashed it down suddenly. Laugh! The shrieking swordwind and the ferocious Hiratora collided with each other like wheat-ons against sharp peaks. In an instant, Susanoo perished together, and finally disappeared into ashes. The ultimate explosion of light was dazzling, and the deafening sound came late. Boom! Centered on the two warring parties, a deep pit with a diameter of 100 meters appeared. The tearing wind scattered randomly, leaving messy streaks on the ground like wind blades. The lake water on the ground had already evaporated, revealing the background of the lake below. When the hurricane caused by the aftermath dissipated and the smoke and dust faded, Metkai was stunned. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame had already run away. Even Suzuki is missing. One day later. Border of Kawa no Kuni. In a small tea house near an inn, Uchiha Itachi sat on a stool with a pale face. Next to him was Suzuki, who looked reluctant, and opposite him was Kisame, who was eating side dishes. Cough. 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 Itachi Uchiha coughed several times and spat out a few mouthfuls of bloody phlegm on his handkerchief. His breath was dissipated and he looked extremely ill. Kisame asked with concern. Itachi, are you okay? Uchiha Itachi shook his head, pretending to be calm, and said. It's okay, it's just an old injury caused by Metkai's attack. Kisame knew that the old wound in Itachi's mouth was actually that his Sharingan was almost at its end, but Suzuki was here and it was not convenient for him to say it. Listening to their conversation, Suzuki frowned and said impatiently. When will you be able to fulfill my master's instructions in contact pain, the leader of your Akatsuki organization. My lord is very dissatisfied with you now. Listening to Sasuke saying my master to the left and my master to the right, Uchiha Itachi covered his face, and there was always a feeling that someone else was taking advantage of my family. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Uchiha Itachi suppressed the anger in his heart, tried his best to suppress the mood of beating Yuya, turned to Kisame and said in a deep voice. Now that we have evacuated the country of fire, we are temporarily safe. It is also time to contact the leader and report our recent itinerary and harvest. What you said makes sense, but I am speechless. Kisame said, I'll just watch you doting on your brother quietly. I won't be exposed, so I won't object. The two reached a consensus, then found a hotel to settle in and chose a room. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame looked at each other and quickly formed seals. The magic lantern body technique. The Akatsuki rings they wore in their hands suddenly glowed dimly. The next moment, Uchiha Itachi felt that his thoughts were like his soul leaving his body, flying far away, and finally gathered in a secret place. Pain, who was far away in Yuyan village, felt something in his heart and immediately formed a seal. His mind turned into an incorporeal body and appeared in a dark cave. Pain immediately set his sights on Uchiha Itachi and Kisame and said, How did you go to Konoha village this time to complete the mission? Uchiha Itachi shook his head and said, Sorry, there was an accident in capturing the Nine Tails Jinhyuriki this time. Later, Uchiha Itachi will meet the White Giant Python Nato and the other parties' request for alliance. After hearing Uchiha Itachi's explanation, Pain's eyes flashed with a terrifying murderous intent, and he asked. I don't care how this giant white python obtained information about the Akatsuki organization, but since you know how harmful he is to the organization, why didn't you kill him on the spot? This was the first time for members of the Akatsuki organization to see Pain get so angry. Thinking about it, the intelligence of the Akatsuki organization was actually known to a giant python in Ryodai Cave. This is something that is hard for Pain to accept. He will never allow you yet to live. Feeling Pain Akago's murderous intention, Uchiha Itachi certainly couldn't let the other party really kill Nato. Don't forget, Nato and Sasuke are now tied together. They both prosper and suffer. Once Nato dies, Sasuke will die too. Can Itachi Uchiha watch his dear brother die? Of course not. In order to keep Sasuke alive, Uchiha Itachi had no choice but to rack his brains and say all the good things for Nato. After thinking for a moment, he bit the bullet and said, Chief, I think the advantages of helping Yuya outweigh the disadvantages. It may even help us speed up the process of capturing the tailed beast. Even Pain had to take Uchiha Itachi's advice seriously. Pain suppressed his anger, his tone was cold and hard, and he said, Itachi, if you can't give me an answer that satisfies me, I will personally issue a killing order to other organization members to kill that giant white python. Chapter 67. The Border of the Land of Rain. The Land of Rain is located in the gap between the three major ninja kingdoms. It is surrounded by the Kingdom of Earth, the Kingdom of Wind, and the Kingdom of Fire. It has been a battleground for military strategists since ancient times. In the history of ninja wars, this place has been the most intense battle among the three kingdoms. Place. Every time there is a war, the Rain country will be turned into a scorched earth, and a large number of people will be separated from their wives and families. It can be imagined how hateful and xenophobic the people here are towards other countries. The Land of Rain has a special location in a cold and rainy climate. Even though it was already noon, the sky was still dark in the Rain country. This is simply because the sky in the Land of Rain is always covered with clouds, and the sunshine here never exceeds 2 hours a day, and it is intermittent. The heavy rain poured down, and countless rain pillars hung from the sky, like bead curtains connected in series, and a white mist rose. The mist was so shallow that you could see things. Under the leadership of Itachi Uchiha, Yuya trekked through the long mountains and spent 4 days finally arriving here. Of course, Yuya was always careful and did not dare to come with his true body. After all, Yuya's operation can be described as going deep into the tiger's den. There is no guarantee that the negotiation will collapse and he will be surrounded and killed by members of the Akatsuki organization. The weakest person in the Akatsuki organization is at least the penumbra level warrior, and the strongest is the super shadow combat power. Facing such a terrifying organization, Yuya dare not be careless at all, as he must be careful to sail a 1,000-year ship. So, he used Sasuke's body. The slavery contract is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Nato's real body stays in Rika Cave and he can completely control Shizuke by focusing on Shizuke. Shizuke has long devoted himself to Nato and regards Nato as his supreme master, so he will naturally not refuse Nato's request. To a certain extent, Shizuke is now Nato's incarnation. Sasuke's dark pupils turned into golden snake pupils. He, or Nato, looked at the shadowy towers in the white mist, with a flash of excitement in his eyes. When he got closer, the whole picture of Yuyan village appeared in Yu Yi's eyes. Because it rains all year round in Yuyan village, most of the buildings here are made of steel, and some are made of stone. Steel pipes of various sizes rise from the ground to form tall towers with towering spires, surrounded by mostly drainage systems. Yuyan village is not big, but because of the excellent drainage system, urban flooding has not occurred. Most of the water is discharged and gathered somewhere in the rain country, forming a large inland lake. According to rumors, Hanzo, who was known as the demigod of the ninja world at that time, and his psychic beast Sanshouayu had been lurking in the inland lake, waiting for the destined person to arrive. When Yuya used Sasuke's body, he followed Uchiha Itachi and Kisame all the way to the gate of Omegakure village. There are 2 Omegakure guards at the door, and the door frame is marked with the village logo of Omegakure village. A horizontal line crosses 4 vertical lines, symbolizing the break between Omegakure village today and the past. Although the 2 guards, Omegakure, recognized Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, Pain had always been strict in managing the village and did not allow his subordinates to make mistakes easily. Therefore, these 2 people were very dedicated to their duties and did not dare to slack off at all. They stopped the 3 of them and said, "Stop! Please show your ID." Without any surprise, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame took out the Akatsuki organization's credentials for accessing Omegakure village. The 2 Yuyan took the certificate and spent nearly a minute looking at it carefully. They checked it carefully and found that there was no problem before returning it and said, "You 2 can go in." Itachi Uchiha frowned slightly, pointed at Shizuke, and said, "I'm going to take him in." The 2 Yugakure don't care how noble your status is or how strong your strength is, they stick to the rules like a machine and said coldly, "As long as he shows his ID, he can go in. You can't enter without a certificate issued by Yuyan village." The xenophobia of Yuyan village is evident. For a moment, Yuya was blocked from the door and was in a dilemma. Nato came here this time not to cause trouble, so it was naturally impossible for him to adopt Jiraiya's method of lurking in. Not to mention that Jiraiya's method won't work. The rain falling from the sky is the rain tiger free technique that Pain has been performing. Yu Yi's every move is under Pain's eyes. Yuya believed that it was impossible for Pain not to know that he had arrived. However, Pain did not notify the guard Yugakure and left Nato outside the door. A thoughtful look flashed in Yu Yi's eyes, and a sneer curled up at the corner of his mouth. Obviously, Pain was trying to intimidate him. Pain's hidden meaning is very clear, that is, he wants Yuya to know that this is his territory and he must abide by his rules. So powerful! Yuya sneered in his heart. But now, people have to bow their heads under the eaves. Yuya also needs to use the power of the Akatsuki organization to eradicate the White Snake Immortal, so as to rise to the top and control the entire Rika Cave. Naturally, he will not show any concern. Those who have always achieved great things will bow their heads when it is time to do so, and will never show off. However, Yuya has already made a note for Pain in his little notebook. When he becomes stronger in the future, he can settle the accounts with Pain. With the wisdom and experience of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, they didn't know anything about the dirty things, but they pretended not to understand. Except for Kisame, who was impatient and went to Omegakure village alone, Uchiha Itachi stayed behind because he was afraid that Shizuke had something wrong with him. Nato borrowed Sasuke's body and stood at the gate of Yuyan village, waiting for a full 6 hours. He waited from noon until the sun set and night came, his legs were sore from standing, and then he finally found the person he was waiting for. From a towering obelisk tower, a pretty figure jumped down. From her back, countless white papers condensed and formed, converging into a pair of 2-meter-long wings. From a distance, it looked like an angel had descended into the world, holding a wonderful picture scroll. Pieces of long white paper fell from the sky like feathers. Yuya suddenly raised his head and saw a woman wearing red clouds and black bottoms with short, smart blue hair landing. Needless to say, everyone knows that she is Xionin. She has a delicate face, long eyelashes that tremble slightly, and beautiful eyes that are full of gaze. The loose black robe cannot cover up her graceful figure at all, and the rough waves underneath are faintly visible, at least it is a D cup. It's a pity that such a beautiful woman has a business-like face towards you yet, giving him a feeling of being cold and untouchable. From Kisame, Conan already learned that the giant white python borrowed the body of the little boy in front of him, and said in a stiff tone. Sorry to keep you waiting for so long. Please come in with me. Yuya looked weird, how can you be sincere in apologizing? In the spirit of a good man not fighting with women, Yuya smiled slightly and said. Then I won't be polite. Having said that, Yuya walked into Yuyan village swaggeringly. Chapter 68. Yuyan village. The heavy rain has been falling non-stop, and the continuous rain water has washed away the ground. There is not much dirt on the ground paved with blue stones, and it looks very neat. On such a night, there would naturally be no moonlight. From the windows of the tall towers on both sides of the street, the candle light emitted wavering candle light. You read that right. Ordinary people here use very simple candle lights. The main reason is that Yuyan village is extremely exclusive and does not trade with the outside world. Also, because of its small size, lack of supplies, and year-round wars, the people's living standards are very poor. Low. The road paved with blue stones is not very wide, and there are even fewer pedestrians on the road. Most of the pedestrians wear bamboo hats on their heads and coir raincoats on their shoulders. They have dishes on their faces and are walking in a hurry. Nato borrowed Sasuke's body and walked on the lonely street. Pedestrians on the road saw him, a stranger, with expressions of resistance and alienation on their faces, avoiding Nato like a god of plague. Some villagers even ran home as if to escape, closing their windows and doors tightly, as if Yuya was a natural disaster in human form. The cold wind blew by, bringing a bit of chill to Yuya. Konan and Uchiha Itachi turned a blind eye, as if they were used to all this, and led Nato straight towards the tallest and largest obelisk tower in Omegakure village. There is the headquarters of the Akatsuki organization. Arriving here, Zionin turned around, still wearing a business-like face, and said in a cold tone. The leader has recalled the members of the organization and prepared a banquet to welcome the distinguished guests. Yuyi's eyes twitched slightly. This is not the way to welcome distinguished guests, okay? Yuya raised his head, penetrated the space of nearly 100 meters, and faintly saw a burly figure above the top of the tower, like a god overlooking mortals, staring at him with cold eyes. The pair of samsara eyes with heavy pupils suddenly came into Yuyi's eyes. A sneer appeared at the corner of Yuyi's mouth, and he felt clear in his heart. Since ancient times, there has been no good feast and no good meeting. Before, Pain asked Yuya to stay outside the village and waited for a full 6 hours. It was just an appetizer. What was really waiting for Yuya was still ahead. Obviously, Pain's power has just begun. If it were on Earth, this would be called the Hungmen Banquet. On the side, Xiaonan had been paying attention to Yuyi's every move. When she saw Yuya sneered, she snorted. Although the voice was small, it happened to reach Yuyi's ears and said, "The frog in the well." Having said that, Zionin ignored Yuya and walked straight into the headquarters of the Akatsuki organization. Yuya knew a long time ago that the Akatsuki organization would not have a good attitude towards him, otherwise they would not have used Sasuke's body to go deep into the tiger's den. Nato shrugged and went in with Itachi Uchiha. Since the tower is nearly 100 meters high, the three of them took an elevator-like tool. Unfortunately, there were no glass windows and they could not see the outside scenery. There was only the dull sound of the chain and the slight shaking of the door. The sound is endless. After nearly 10 minutes, with the sound of the compartment door ding, the three of them finally reached the top of the tower. With Zionin leading the way, Nato and Uchiha Itachi walked side by side and came to a door. Click! Zionin opened the door and saw a very spacious hall. The dim lights in the hall, the colorful lights, and the magnificent decorations make people immersed in it. The temperature inside is warm, and the warm wind blows in, driving away the cold and humid air outside. Originally, various members of the Akatsuki organization had been seated in the hall for a long time, and the familiar members were fighting and cursing among themselves. However, after Zionin opened the door, everyone immediately stopped talking and lined up on both sides. Each member of the Akatsuki organization looked solemn, and the aura of bloodshed was exposed. A red carpet stretched from the door to the bottom of the throne. A seemingly young man with short orange hair was sitting on the throne in a majestic manner. When Yuya stepped into the hall, a pair of eyes focused on him with scrutiny, coldness, and hostility, but there was no friendliness, as if this place was a legendary cannibal cave. If you were timid, you might have been frightened to death by these vicious looks. Yuya looked around. There were currently 10 people in the Akatsuki organization. In addition to Pain sitting on the throne, there were dining tables and tatami for 9 people on both sides. Among them, only Yuya has no place. Yuya stood at the door and said to Pain from a distance. I originally thought that the Akatsuki organization is the most powerful in the ninja world, and its leader should be a tycoon with ambitious plans, but I didn't expect. As soon as Yuya said these words, the entire hall became so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Pairs of eyes were cast from both sides, both with cold murderous intent and deep-seated aura. If looks could kill, Yuya would have been cut into pieces countless times. Of course Uchiha Itachi cannot allow them to hurt Sasuke, even if Nato is using Sasuke's body to commit suicide. Uchiha Itachi stood quietly next to Yuya, like a god of murder, with a cold aura, acting as a protector. Seeing Yuya being protected by Uchiha Itachi, other people had strange expressions on their faces, but the leader did not say anything and could only hold it back. Even Deidara, who hated Uchiha Itachi the most, did not dare to make a mistake. As the most trusted person of Pain, Xiaonan was the first to resist Yuya's cynicism and said with a straight face. What can't be expected? Yuya glanced at Xiaonan and saw that her eyes were evil, and she felt like if you don't speak well, I will kill you. Yuya shrugged his shoulders, his face calm, ignoring the murderous eyes around him, and said calmly. What a pity, the person sent to greet the guests has a bad attitude, and even the owner of this place is not very broad-minded. He even forgot to give the guests a place. How can such a person accomplish great things? Pa! Deidara has a hot temper. He slapped the table and looked at Yuya teasingly, saying. Whether you can succeed or not is not up to you. Do you want to try the clay bomb I made specially for you? If you can handle it, I will admit that you are right. Yuya looked at Deidara with a look of mental retardation. Only a fool would agree to it, right? Without Yuya saying anything, Uchiha Itachi automatically stood up, staring at Deidara with a pair of Mangeki Sharingan coldly, and said. Before that, I'll let you taste the taste of Tsukuyomi, how about it? This sentence immediately evoked some bad memories of Deidara, but it was not his style to just give in. Deidara glared at Uchiha Itachi and questioned. You traitor, you actually helped outsiders. Uchiha Itachi pointed at Sasuke's body borrowed by Yuya with a blank expression, and said. He is my brother. Deidara. Enough. It was still Pain who spoke, and the final word was, serve the guests. Chapter 69. After Yuya and Uchiha Itachi sat down one by one, Tendo Pain raised his glass and said. The purpose of holding this banquet today is to welcome our distinguished guests. On behalf of all members of the Akatsuki organization, I welcome your distinguished guests here. Seeing the leader's behavior, the others also raised their glasses. Naturally, Yuya couldn't be a bad person and refused, so he toasted with everyone from a distance. For a time, there was a lot of drinking, and it seemed that both host and guest were enjoying themselves. Tendo Pain put down his wine glass, suddenly changed his voice, pointed to Kakuzu sitting next to him, and said with profound meaning. Dear guest, do you know who he is? Kakuzu wore a mask, covering most of his face, making it difficult to detect his true face. When Tendo Pain said these words, his eyes were fixed on Yuya, watching his expression change. Nato appeared here through Sasuke's body, and he was not afraid of death. What's more, he already knew the information of everyone in the Akatsuki organization, and his face was indifferent, as if he had the pearl of wisdom in his hand. Yuya didn't speak, and Kakuzu thought he was pretending, and said with an unhappy look on his face. I think back then, when I assassinated the first dame of Konoha, this little kid like you wasn't even born yet. Yuya glanced at him sideways and sneered. Back then, Senju Hashirama was just merciful and spared the life of an old man like you. However, you, a defeated general under his command, can brag about it to this day and don't feel ashamed at all. You. The scars were stabbed directly, and Kakuzu's whole body became hairy. Kakuzu suddenly stood up, the resentment in his body faintly appeared, exuding a terrifying killing intent. However, Yuya turned a blind eye and calmly ate the side dishes on the table. He still had time to comment and said. This grilled fish is not cooked enough and is a bit fishy. Kakuzu heard Nato attack him with insinuations, but he almost said directly. You are not worthy to be my opponent. The veins on Kakuzu's forehead popped out, and the purple and blue veins pulsated like a few caterpillars squirming, making him look particularly ferocious. Just when Kakuzu couldn't help but violently murder, the voice of Tendo Pain came. Kakuzu, how unbecoming are you? Don't let our distinguished guests see our joke. The leader had already spoken, but Kakuzu could only glare at Yuya hatefully, and make a knife with his hands to cut his throat, which was full of threats, and then reluctantly sat back down in his seat. Tiandao Pain glanced at Black and White Ju, and Black and White Ju understood immediately. We can't let Yuya take the spotlight. GGG. GGG. Black and White Ju made a series of unpleasant sounds like a night owl, pointed his sharp edge at Yuya, and said. When a distinguished guest comes to your door, you actually have to hide your head and show your tail. You don't dare to come with your true body. With all due respect, your guest is too timid, right? After saying that, Heibeiji raised the corners of his mouth and watched Yuya lose his composure quietly. Kakuzu, who had just been scolded by Yuya, suddenly felt refreshed and laughed. It turns out he is just a coward, then I will ignore the faults of villains, ha ha ha. Except for Itachi Uchiha, the other members of the Akatsuki organization were either sarcastic or playful, watching Nato make a fool of himself. Tiandao Pain sat high on the throne, watching the life below with indifferent eyes, without making any remarks. Although Tendo Pain has decided to take Uchiha Itachi's suggestion and have limited cooperation with NATO, the Akatsuki organization must be the leader. In order to gain the dominance in conquering Longdi Cave, Tiandao Pain must suppress Yuya and let Yuya know one thing. Here, you should listen to him. God Pain is so domineering. Facing the crowd of heroes, Yuya remained calm, took a sip of wine and said. There is an old saying in my hometown, one who is close to vermilion is red, and one who is close to ink is black. It's not that I deliberately hide my head and tail, but everyone here is just a rat crossing the street in the ninja world. Everyone shouts about beating me. I usually hide in this place and hide in this area. I don't dare to show up in the ninja world. Since I want to visit the rat, I had to act like a mouse. Quiet. Awesome silence. As soon as Yu Yi's words came out, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees, and the cold wind hit people, making people's skin crawl. Anyone who is compared to a mouse will probably feel unhappy, not to mention that almost all the members of the Akatsuki organization present here have explosive tempers. Snap! I'm so angry. Deidara had such a bad temper. He took out a few clay bombs from his pockets with both hands and stared at Nato fiercely. The more he looked at him, the more disgusting he became, making him feel more disgusting than Uchiha Itachi. Today, no one can stop me, I will blow up this turtle sun. Uchiha Itachi's mouth twitched slightly. Although he was very reluctant, Yuya borrowed Sasuke's body. For the sake of his dear brother, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and stood in front of Deidara, saying coldly. If you want to get over, step over my body first. Uchiha Itachi. Deidara gritted his teeth in anger and said in a hateful voice, I have been unhappy with you for a long time. Watch me blow you up. With that said, Deidara was about to throw a clay bomb. Enough. At this moment, Tendo Pain suddenly raised his right hand, and Shinra Tenzen exploded. A sonic boom sounded in the air, as if an invisible hand pushed Deidara, and he flew upside down like a kite with a broken string. Boom! Deidara hit the wall, but was not seriously injured. Obviously, Tiandao Pain only punished him with small punishments, but did not use any force. Pain suppressed his anger, stared at Yu Yi indifferently, and said. Today is a great day to welcome the distinguished guests, don't fight and kill at every turn. Pain's words are very interesting. If you savor them carefully, you will understand his other meaning. After today, you can kill him however you want, Deidara. Although Deidara is reckless and sometimes his mind is not clear, the key is that he has a good teammate. Scorpion will always be indignant and curse Deidara back to his seat and whisper a few words in his ear. After a while, Deidara suddenly turned from cloudy to sunny, but he looked at Yu Yi from time to time, with naked murderous eyes. Okay. On the throne, Pain spoke again, saying. My subordinates are usually unruly and disobedient, which makes you laugh. Seeing that Yu Yi didn't say anything, his face almost said, I'll just watch you pretending to be cool. Pain looked uneasy, waved his hand, and said. Let's not say those unlucky words, let's relax. Pain pointed at Scorpion and said. Dear guest, next, let this subordinate of mine perform an entertainment program for you." With a smile in his eyes, Yu Yi clasped his hands together and said, "It is my great fortune to be able to appreciate the performance of the famous Red Sand Scorpion in the ninja world." Chapter 70. Scorpion did not appear in his true form. From beginning to end, he was shown to the public in Fei Liuhu. At this time, when he heard that Pain Tiandao asked him to come out to perform the sideshow, Scorpion hunched his back and swayed onto the red carpet, with the scorpion tail made entirely of metal swaying gently behind him. Xia looked at Yu Ye and said in a hoarse voice deliberately, "Then I'll show my shame." Xia is very rational. He understands the underlying meaning of Tiandao pain very well. However, because he has been criticized by Yu Ye several times before, but he does not want to use force, so as not to make his face look ugly and look like a chicken, he lets him use his own power. The best stunt is to show Yu Ye a little color. Of course these words cannot be spoken, they can only be understood, not expressed. Xia took out a scroll from his pocket and spread it out on the ground. Xia pressed one hand on the scroll, and with a bang, green smoke came out, sealed inside the scroll, and hundreds of puppets of various colors suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Fortunately, the entire banquet hall is very spacious. Even if hundreds of puppets appear, it still looks very empty. These puppets are of different ages and genders, with different expressions. They are dressed in red robes and are very delicate and lifelike. One of the things they have in common is that they all stare straight at Yu Ye with a pair of dull eyes. Their dark eyes are unblinking, as if they want to see through Yu Ye's entire body. Looking into the eyes of these puppets, if you were an ordinary person, you would probably break out in cold sweat on the back of your palms. It's so weird. Yu Ye already knew the trick in his heart, he laughed loudly and said, "I heard that the Red Sand Scorpion wiped out a small country with just its own strength. I'm afraid these puppets here are all hard-working and meritorious, right?" Having such a capable subordinate as Xia, Tiandao Pain felt very proud and seemed very happy, and said cheerfully, "Please, distinguished guests, enjoy the performance of my subordinate." Yu Ye narrowed his eyes slightly and continued, "Then I'll wait and see. The average puppet master can only control 2 or 3 puppets at the same time. After all, people only have 10 fingers, and the most outstanding puppet master, Granny Cho, can control 10 puppets at the same time, and she is already walking sideways in Sunagakure village. But the reason why a genius is that he dares to do things that ordinary people dare not think of. Chakra threads as thin as hair are connected to hundreds of puppets from Scorpion's body. If anyone outside saw this scene, they would be shocked. Red secret technique. Hundreds of exercises. Accompanied by Scorpion's low shout, the puppet followed the chakra thread, sometimes flying like silk, sometimes advancing and retreating gracefully, making people immersive. The numerous phantoms surrounding Scorpion seemed to be cheering for Scorpion. The dance that everyone is familiar with is just a variety of dance postures. But these puppets under Xia performed a unique dance. There was no background music and no harmony, but under the control of Xia Jingtianwei Lun, hundreds of puppets actually performed touching joys and sorrows. The dance of the puppets has long been separated from the description of dance by words such as ethereal and ethereal. Everyone, including Yu Ye, was attracted by the puppet dance drama performed by Xia. Especially in one of the parts of the Little Gao dynasty, the protagonist in the puppet found that his parents were killed, but found that he was not strong enough and could only watch his enemies roam freely. The feeling of powerlessness and despair made people sigh deeply. And then, the puppet show continues. In order to take revenge, the protagonist starts to work hard, starts to struggle, and uses all means to become stronger. But under the light, the protagonist puppet was holding a long sword. The silver light reflected was like moonlight, and the sword dance was as gentle as the moonlight. The sword is like frost and snow, and the whole body is silvery. Although the sword is like a on, and the energy is like a rainbow, it has not lost its gentle and jade-like temperament at all. It is like the most tranquil lake. The moment the breeze blows, it only becomes more and more. His talent is outstanding and his romance is peaceful. The sword energy seemed to be given life, wandering around it, lifting the clothes and dancing around. In an instant, Yu Ye had an illusion, as if this puppet was about to ride the wind and return with its sword. The feet are not stained with dust, and are as light as a wandering cloud. Everyone applauded Xia's performance, even Yu Ye was no exception. And unknowingly, the protagonist in the puppet show had approached and came to a place less than 20 meters away from NATO. Immediately afterwards, the highest part of the entire puppet show dance comes, the protagonist is about to avenge his parents. It's too late to say it, but it's soon. The puppet's long sword suddenly changed its style. It was no longer as light and agile as before, and a sharp and fierce sword went straight to Sasuke's chest where Nato was attached. Quick! Extremely fast. If it were an ordinary ninja, he would have been immersed in the performance just now and ignored this fatal crisis. However, Yuya seemed to have nothing to do. While drinking a small drink, he made comments and said, "The sword's light is sharp, what a murderous sword." Everyone was surprised to see that Yuya had no intention of dodging. It's too late to say it, but it's soon. Seeing that the tip of the sword was about to touch Yuyi's chest, two steel-like fingers clamped the tip of the sword tightly, preventing the sword from making any further progress. Yuya shook his head and said calmly, "The sword is a good sword, but unfortunately it has chosen the wrong target." Two fingers exerted force, and with a click, the tip of the sword broke. Scorpion didn't get angry, it just moved hundreds of silky chakra lines. Instantly, hundreds of puppets followed him like shadows, overwhelming the sky and killing towards Yuyi's position. Facing this group of puppets that could destroy a country, Yuyi raised his right hand, extended his index finger, and swung it left and right. "Tisk tisk tisk, I can't let you ruin the delicious food on my table." Then, Yuyi interlocked his middle finger and thumb and snapped his fingers. Snap! With a crisp sound, Yuyi, along with the table and the food on it, all turned into a pile of flames and disappeared from everyone's sight. Boom! 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 The attacks of hundreds of puppets fell in vain. The knife cuts, sword cuts, and bombardments made the place where Yuyi was originally located unrecognizable, leaving only a mess. A flame appeared on the beam of the hall. Yuyi held the wooden table in his arms, a piece of tempura in his mouth, and looked down at Scorpion, applauding and saying, "As expected of Scorpion, the Red Sand who destroyed a country by himself, your performance really amazed me." Yuyi's little trick borrowed the wonderful use of the instant body technique and the substitute technique, which he called the flame instant body. As soon as Pu appeared, he shocked the whole audience. Hearing Yuyi's words, the faces of others were not very good, but Scorpion was calm, cleaned up the puppet, looked at Yuyi calmly, and said, "If I have the chance, I will make you into a puppet." Chapter 71. Scorpion packed up the puppets and took his seat again. After all, this was just an entertainment performance at the banquet, not on the battlefield. It was not necessary to fight to the death. Just stop when it was enough. Pain sat on the throne, his face a little ugly. Originally, he wanted to suppress Yuyi's arrogance, but unexpectedly, this white python did have some real skills and repeatedly resolved the crisis. As the host, Pain couldn't take action directly. Otherwise, how could he be the leader of an organization? But Pain was unwilling to give up like this. He was always strong and would never allow anyone or anything to be beyond his control. Seeing Yuyi savoring the tempura with relish, Tend Pain suddenly had an idea, and forced a smile on his stiff face, saying, "Dear guest, are you satisfied with the dishes we served?" Since Yuyi traveled through time and reincarnated as a snake, he has been eating all kinds of animals raw. Suddenly eating delicacies cooked by humans, it immediately evoked the good memories of being a human in the previous life, and he ate them voraciously. Braised, steamed, boiled, pan-fried. These dishes that Yuyi thought were very ordinary before, but now he has feasted his mouth. You can never imagine the disgusting feeling that Yuyi felt when he was forced by Yakushi Kabuto to eat rats and cockroaches. After hearing Tend Pain's words, Yuyi swallowed a few bites of teriyaki chicken steak, and then put down his bowl and chopsticks with a sense of satisfaction, licked his lips, and said with joy, "Satisfied. Very satisfied." Looking at Yuyi's performance, the other members of the Akatsuki organization immediately showed contempt, and their faces were almost written with, "This bumpkin." Pain sneered, saying, "Since the distinguished guest likes it so much, I have another top-quality dish here. I wonder if the distinguished guest dares to eat it." Yuyi wiped the oil stains from the corners of his mouth, as if he did not notice the hostility in Pain's eyes, and smiled calmly. "There is nothing I dare not eat, whether it is flying in the sky, running on the ground, or swimming in the water." Pain smiled, clasped his hands and said with a smile, "The distinguished guest is so brave." Then, Pain raised his right hand, and the ceiling split from the middle and moved to both sides. Since this is already the roof, when the ceiling is completely removed, the entire banquet hall is exposed to the outside, and the towering obelisks come into view. The whistling cold wind, with a damp and cold breath, blew away the warm temperature in the hall. Of course, Pain had long lifted the Yahoo freedom technique to prevent himself from becoming a drowned chicken and being drenched by the heavy rain. Yi looked strange. Why did this happen suddenly? Yi couldn't figure out what Pain was up to, so he remained calm and watched the situation unfold. Pain had been observing Yi's expression, and seeing him act like this, he sneered even more, thinking to himself. I'll see how you stay calm later. Pain snapped his fingers and said loudly. Then, let's invite our distinguished guests to see the next exquisite dish. Hey! A whistling gale, like a typhoon, blew the decorations in the entire hall to the ground, and even swept them out of the house, falling from a height of nearly 100 meters. Fortunately, everyone present was the elite among the elites in the ninja world, and the weakest one was Penumbra. Although the incident happened suddenly, they still sat in their original positions, like nails stuck in the ground, and were not blown away by the gale. Suddenly, a huge figure appeared from the distant horizon. In less than 5 seconds, it came to the rooftop, casting a huge shadow, and a terrifying aura spread out. Yi suddenly raised his head, and a monster with wings on its back, similar to a combination of a beetle and a dragonfly, was floating above his head. It was Shijiki the seven-tailed beast. Shijiki the seven-tailed beast was a rare tailed beast with the ability to fly among all the tailed beasts. In the past, it had always been a strategic weapon of the Takigakuer. Its Jinkriki was a girl named Fu. Yi did not expect that during this period of time, the Akatsuki organization had successfully captured the seven-tailed beast. As for the purpose of Pain summoning Shijiki the seven-tailed beast, it was self-evident. Pressure. Pressure again. Kisame took out Samehada and went up to cut a piece of meat from Shijiki the seven-tailed beast, which was 3 centimeters thick and bloody. The eyes of Shijiki had the Samsara eye, and he was obviously under the control of Pain. He had no reaction to Kisame taking the meat. Kisame cut the meat, put it on a silver plate, and presented it to Yi. Pain looked at Yi meaningfully, opened his hand to make a gesture of invitation, and sneered. Then, please enjoy this dish, Shijiki's fresh meat. Didn't you say that you dare to eat anything flying in the sky, running on the ground, and swimming in the water? I'll see how you can eat it. Pain sneered in his heart, just waiting for Yi to make a fool of himself. The tailed beasts are the product of the materialization and condensation of high concentration chakra. Therefore, the meat of the tailed beasts contains high concentration chakra. For humans in the ninja world, this is not a delicacy at all, but a severe poison. Because the chakra in the human body is incompatible with the chakra of the tailed beasts. When humans eat the meat of a tailed beast, it is like eating a bomb, which will cause a violent rebound of chakra in the body, and then explode with a bang. Of course, the ninja world has been around for thousands of years, and it is not absolute. There will always be some guys with different physiques who can eat the meat of the tailed beasts without dying. Among them, Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who are said to have the bloodline of the Six-Path Sage, are examples. In addition to the fact that people in the past who ate the meat of the tailed beasts almost never escaped unscathed, the confidence of Pain is also because Yi is not a human, but a giant python. Seeing Yi like a wooden chicken, not daring to speak, as a lackey, Hibaiju stood up and said sarcastically. Dear guests, please don't let us down. Yi came back to his senses, glanced at them, smiled faintly, and said. As a guest, how can I refuse the host's hospitality? I just think that the amount is too small, not enough to fill my teeth. Pain raised his eyebrows and said secretly. Pretend, keep pretending. Seeing that no one responded, Yi sighed and said. Then I have no choice but to refuse. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi opened his bloody mouth and swallowed the 3 centimeter thick-tailed beast meat into his mouth. After that, Yi licked his mouth, looking unsatisfied. 1 second. 5 seconds. 1 minute. Seeing that Yi was intact, Hibaiju said in surprise. How come you are fine? Yi touched his slightly swollen belly, pretending not to understand, and said. What can happen to me? Verb. Chapter 72. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring a part of Nanabi Chongming and obtaining 70,000 devouring evolution genes. The system's prompt made Yi a little excited. Just now, a 3 centimeter thick piece of Nanabi Chongming's meat was actually equivalent to the harvest of a shadow-level strongman. For a moment, Yu Yi looked up at Nanabe Chongming with a hot look in his eyes. If Nanabe Chongming was eaten whole. No. 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 I can't keep thinking about it, I'm afraid I can't help it. Yu Yi shook his head and barely suppressed this greed. Yu Yi didn't forget that his white python's body was the limit when it reached the super ultimate body. Unless he swallowed the 10 tails and obtained the leap evolution of the race, he would only be a snake for the rest of his life and could not jump out of this barrier. Yu Yi's fiery look was not concealed, and naturally did not escape the eyes of everyone present. Black and white taunts failed, and returned to his seat in disgrace. The members of the Akatsuki organization had strange colors on their faces, but they were not easy to express. As for the instigator, Pain, he was already discouraged. He never thought that the trump card he prepared would not scare Yu Yi. With a sigh in his heart, Pain's face became serious, and he finally got to the point of the banquet, saying, Yu Yi. From the beginning of the banquet to now, this is the first time that Pain has formally called Yu Yi's name, which means that he has regarded him as being on an equal footing with himself. I agree to the alliance request you asked Itachi to convey to me. After many days of planning, the results finally came to fruition, and Yu Yi breathed a sigh of relief. But Pain changed his tone, and Yu Yi's heart, which had just been relaxed, was lifted up again. Yu Yi raised a middle finger to Pain in his heart. He couldn't speak more clearly, and he kept people so suspenseful. He was going to die. With a hint of coldness in his eyes, Pain stared down at Yu Yi and said, I can send people into Ryokai Cave to help you get rid of the White Snake Immortal. I don't ask about your rule, and I don't want those so-called immortal arts practice methods. But from now on, there can only be one voice in Ryokai Cave, and all summoned beasts must obey the orders of the Akatsuki organization. If you dare not obey, kill. No. Pardon. The last 3 words were said by Pain in a decisive and unyielding manner, with a taste of iron and blood. Those who follow me will prosper, and those who go against me will perish. Pain is so domineering. Pain has great ambitions. He not only wants to help Yu Yi get to the top, but also wants to take control of one of the 3 major training holy places in the ninja world, and use it as a springboard to display his lofty ambitions. If it were the real natives of Ryokai Cave, I'm afraid they would not accept Pain's suggestion. Because this is equivalent to selling the entire Ryokai Cave to the Akatsuki organization. Even if he gets to the top, he will just become someone else's employee. But for Yu Yi, this is not a problem at all. Yu Yi just wants to complete the system tasks quickly and get the resources to become stronger. Selling teammates or something, can you say that the giant python is selling? This is to bring the ignorant and backward Ryokai Cave to a wider world, and let the snakes in the ignorant era go to the infinite sea of stars. Ahem, okay, I can't make it up anymore. Having said that, if Yu Yi agrees so easily, I am afraid that the members of the Akatsuki organization will look down on him. So, Yu Yi pretended to be deep, pondered for a moment, and said, I can accept your proposal, but there are 2 conditions. Pain raised his eyebrows unhappily. There are actually people who are not afraid of death who put forward conditions to him? Fortunately, Pain is very good at cultivating chi, and he is very calm and did not immediately attack. Facing the eyes of others who cared for the little expert in seeking death, Yu Yi said calmly. My conditions are very simple. First, the body of Suzuki that I am attached to now will join your Akatsuki organization and act as a liaison between us. Second, your Akatsuki organization must find 100 people with bloodline limits for me. I don't care if they are old, weak, sick, or disabled, even if they only have half their lives left. These 2 requirements were also the decisions made by Yu Yi after careful consideration. Nowadays, it is difficult for Yu Yi to provide devouring evolution genes to Yu Yi by killing ninjas whose strength is below that of Jonin. But there is an exception, that is, ninjas with bloodline limits. Yu Yi had discovered before that the devouring evolution genes obtained by absorbing the bloodline limits in the body of a ninja are actually similar to the gains of killing a cage-level strongman. If Yu Yi wants to find other bloodline limit owners with his own strength, it will be a time-consuming and laborious task. I don't know how long it will take. But entrusting this matter to Akatsuki organization is completely different. As the king of the underground world, Akatsuki not only has these 10 core members, but also a large number of peripheral members distributed in various places in the ninja world. With Akatsuki's ability in the underground world, only 100 bloodline limit holders can be quickly collected. As long as a large number of bloodline limits are swallowed, Yu Yi's strength can be rapidly enhanced in a short period of time. Pain was silent for a while. The two conditions proposed by Yu Yi were acceptable to both him and Akatsuki. Pain hesitated because he didn't know what Yu Yi's purpose was. Pain, who was used to controlling everything, naturally wanted to find out Yu Yi's thoughts. However, Pain glanced at Yu Yi from the corner of his eye, and saw that Yu Yi was wolfing down the food on the table again. He couldn't help but laugh and said to himself, "I really think too highly of him. After all, he is just a greedy beast." Under the gaze of many eyes, Pain made the final decision and said, "Yes." After the voice fell, the members of the Akatsuki organization had different reactions. Uchiha Itachi was secretly happy, so he had a reason to stay with Suzuki. As for Kakuzu and Deidara, out of anger at Yu Yi, they were naturally very annoyed by Pain's decision, but it was difficult to refute the leader, and they all made throat-cutting gestures towards Yu Yi, which was full of threats. Konan came out of a secret door, holding a box in her hand, which was carved with dragons and phoenixes and exquisitely crafted. It was obvious that there were very valuable things kept inside. Konan opened the box, and a ring lay quietly inside, with a word engraved on it. Empty. This is the ring that originally belonged to Orochimaru. After a lot of twists and turns, it came into Yu Yi's hands. Konan handed the box to Yu Yi, still with a businesslike face, as if Yu Yi owed her a lot of money, and said coldly, "This is the ring of Akatsuki code name Kong Chen. I hope you can keep it well and don't lose it." Yu Yi's face was calm, and he took out the ring calmly and put it on the middle finger of Sasuke's right hand. From today, Sasuke officially joined Akatsuki. Chapter 73. The alliance with Akatsuki finally came to an end. Yu Yi attached himself to Sasuke's body and, under the leadership of Konan, came to a room belonging to Sasuke. Yu Yi sent Konan away, closed the door, and immediately cut off contact with Sasuke. "Hey!" Sasuke collapsed on the bed, his limbs weak, and his face looked broken. There are two different souls in one body, just like two sticks stuffed into the same tight cavernous body, not to mention how uncomfortable it is. What's more, Yu Yi's soul strength is very high, so Sasuke's body has been running at a high load. Now that Yu Yi no longer borrows his body, Sasuke suddenly seems to have his bones taken out, lying on the bed like a puddle of mud, unable to lift even a finger. Sasuke looked at the unfamiliar ceiling of the room and always felt that his experience during this period was incredible. He just joined Akatsuki? It feels like a dream. Sasuke was exhausted and too sleepy, and soon fell asleep. Ah! A sigh came from the corner of the room. Uchiha Itachi walked out, silently glanced at Sasuke, and when he saw that he was fine, he returned to the corner. This night, he must be a good protector of his younger brother. Ryokai Cave. Yu Yi withdrew his attention from Sasuke, and suddenly felt a headache. Pain. Huge pain. It hurts more than giving birth. Yu Yi shook his huge snake head and secretly reminded himself, saying, "It seems that if it is not necessary in the future, use this trick less." Just when Yu Yi wanted to hit the wall with a headache, a beautiful figure appeared in Yu Yi's sight. Tianxin Shenji, wearing a green palace dress, came slowly, with smoke-like white silk wrapped in gold-threaded green silk edging, and faint green bamboo leaves embroidered on the hem and cuffs, looking noble and elegant. Under the bright moonlight, she revealed a delicate and charming face, with a bun on her head and a set of gorgeous pearl jewelry, which made her look elegant and dignified. Unfortunately, as soon as she opened her mouth, her inherent harshness destroyed this hard-earned make-up temperament. "Yu Yi, the last time the White Snake Immortal summoned you to Yunzili, why haven't you left yet? Do you know that if you make the Immortal angry, the consequences will be serious?" Facing the aggressiveness of Tianxin Shenji, Yu Yi behaved very calmly. Of course, it was not in Yu Yi's interest to turn against the White Snake Immortal right away. After all, Yu Yi had just reached an alliance with the Akatsuki organization, and the other party had not yet decided who to send. What's more, Yu Yi's head was hurting so much that it was very difficult for him to use force. Under the constraints of various conditions, Yu Yi naturally chose to cater to the surface and delay time secretly. Yu Yi forced a smile on his face, and deliberately said in a flattering tone, "Lord Tianxin, you also know that I was summoned to the ninja world by the contractor, so I was delayed for a while. Look, I just returned to Ryokai Cave not long ago." Tianxin Shenji put her hands on her waist, without any sympathy for Yu Yi's difficulties, and said, "I don't care. Anyway, you must go with me now. Otherwise, the anger of the immortal is not something you and I can bear." Yu Yi's eyes flashed with anger. He didn't expect Tian Xinchenji to be so aggressive and uncharacteristic. This is obviously wrong. With the tingling feeling in his mind, Yu Yi's mind turned quickly. What on earth could make the White Snake Immortal summon him so anxiously? The White Snake Immortal is almost a character standing at the top of the ninja world, and not many people and things can threaten her. No. There is still. That is, the 1000-year war between Ryokai Cave and Miyaboku Mountain. Previously, Yu Yi killed Wan Shi, who happened to be the vanguard general who attacked Miyaboku Mountain. Without Wan Shi, Longqi Cave would naturally lack a pillar, which would lead to the failure of this war. In this way, it makes sense that the White Snake Immortal summoned Yu Yi so anxiously this time. This is to ask Yu Yi to take over Wan Shi's position and attack Miyaboku Mountain. Yu Yi refused this thankless job from the bottom of his heart. However, Yu Yi certainly couldn't tear his face at the moment, so he had to pretend to be loyal and said, "Since the Immortal summoned me, I will go to Yunzili immediately to meet the Immortal." Seeing Yu Yi's behavior, Tian Xinchenji finally let go of her heart. She was most afraid that Yu Yi would not agree and bite her to death. That was the outcome she least wanted to see, so as soon as she came, she used the name of the White Snake Immortal to knock Yu Yi. Now it seems that I have finally completed the task assigned by the White Snake Immortal. Tian Xinchenji smiled, as if she had just escaped from the aggressiveness. She came to Yu Yi kindly, touched his smooth and delicate scales, and said, "Brother Yu Yi, don't blame me for being so rude just now. I had no choice." Yu Yi rolled his eyes secretly. "I believed you, an old man, so bad." Seeing that Yu Yi ignored her face, Tian Xinchenji's smile was a little stiff, and she led Yu Yi to Yunzili. Yu Yi didn't want to see the White Snake Immortal so early, so he dawdled on the road, dragging the journey of half a day for 3 days and 3 nights, and finally arrived at Yunzili on a moonless night. To use an immature analogy, this is like a man who has done enough foreplay and rubs himself outside the woman's place, but refuses to go in. Not to mention how annoying it is. Tian Xinchenji's face was very ugly. Anyone who saw Yu Yi procrastinating like this and had no way to deal with it would feel very uncomfortable. So angry. Tian Xinchenji glanced at Yu Yi bitterly and walked into the cave. After walking in the valley for a long time, my eyes suddenly opened up. A magnificent palace appeared in front of Yu Yi. The White Snake Immortal is still the same as before, with a slender and old snake body, lying lazily on the throne, his head resting on his head. Tilting his head, he glanced sideways at Yu Yi from the corner of his eyes, and said coldly as soon as he came, "Yu Yi, do you know your guilt?" Yu Yi pretended to be confused, looking left and right, with a dazed expression on his face, and said, "Immortal, are you talking about me?" Seeing Yu Yi being so disrespectful to the White Snake Immortal, Tian Xinchenji thought she had the Immortal's backing, and suddenly became bolder. She vented her anger on the road and angrily said, "Presumptuous! Yu Yi, pay attention to the tone of your words." Yu Yi secretly estimated that he had delayed the Akatsuki organization for 3 days, giving him enough time to prepare. For the sake of caution, Yu Yi also contacted Suzuki, who was far away in the ninja world, and he suddenly felt certain. Yu Yi changed his previous behavior, looked at Tian Xinchenji arrogantly, and said, "The tone of your words makes me very unhappy." Chapter 74. The tone of your words makes me very unhappy. After Yu Yi's words fell, they continued to echo in the splendid palace, over and over again. Tian Xinchenji's Yang's shoulders trembled slightly and she was shaking with anger. A pair of green eyes burst out with a look of resentment. She was so angry that even her voice was a little distorted. She screamed angrily at a high decibel level. "Bold maniac! How dare you be so rude in front of an immortal?" Tian Xinchenji turned around, bowed to the White Snake Immortal, and said, "Immortal, Yu Yi is disrespectful and does not take you seriously. I propose that he be expelled from Longdi Cave as a warning to others." Pity. Before Tian Xinchenji finished speaking, a snake letter shot out from Yu Yi like a halberd, stabbing through her back and piercing out of her chest. Blood gurgled down. Tian Xinchenji's beautiful eyes widened and she looked at the snake letter protruding from her chest with a face filled with uncertainty. How dare he start killing here? How dare he? Isn't he afraid of the punishment from the White Snake Immortal? With deep doubts and unwillingness in her heart, Tian Xinchenji leaned forward and fell to the ground with a bang. Her body changed and revealed her original shape, which was a slender white snake. Seeing Tian Xinchenji fall down, the eyes of the white snake immortal that were half closed in the past suddenly opened. The body that was originally lying lazily on the throne suddenly stood upright with its upper body, a head taller than Yu Ye. A pair of lantern-sized pupils stared at Yu Ye with a strong sense of oppression. At this moment, the white snake immortal was like a lion waking up from its slumber. The grey-white scales of the white snake immortal, under the illumination of the moon pearl, exude a dazzling light that is difficult to dodge. He is elegant, noble, domineering, and majestic like Mount Tai standing in front of Yu Ye. The majesty of the king exuded from her body even made Yu Ye a little breathless. Under the gaze of the white snake immortal, even though Yu Ye was used to being lawless, he felt a palpitation in his heart and instinctively stepped back 3 meters. The eyes of the white snake immortal seemed to be spitting out fire, and like the hoarse sound of 2 pieces of rusty iron rubbing against each other, it resounded throughout the palace. Nato, you are forcing me to kill you. Ryadai Cave follows the law of the dark forest where the weak prey on the strong. If Yu Ye killed Tian Shinji elsewhere, the white snake immortal would not blame him and would even reward him. Because in her eyes, garbage has no survival value. But the nature of Yu Ye killing in front of her old man is completely different. That was a slap in her face. Originally, immortal white snake quite admired Yu Ye, a junior. In Yu Ye, she saw decisive killing and cold cruelty. These are not good comments from the outside world, but in Longdi Cave, they are the only way to become a strong man. Even the white snake immortal was thinking of training Yu Ye to be the vanguard general who invaded Miamu Mountain, so that the old immortal in Miamu Mountain could see that the toad descendants under him were just a bunch of rubbish. Pity. Yu Yeqian shouldn't, absolutely shouldn't, kill in front of her. An extremely terrifying aura gushed out from the white snake immortal and filled the splendid palace. The walls made of gold were trembling faintly, shaking off layers of ash. Whoosh! It's all a long story, but as soon as the white snake immortal finished speaking, the snake's tail that had been hiding behind the throne swung, and then it suddenly shot out in the void, speeding towards Yu Ye not far away. Another old bastard. Fortunately, Yu Ye had anticipated this. Laugh. The snake's tail made a sharp whistling sound and penetrated Yu Ye's head like a spiral drill. But the next moment, Yu Ye's huge snake body suddenly dispersed and turned into sparks, dissipating in place. Flame clone. Immortal white snake relied on his keen perception, his eyes were like lightning, and he stared at a corner of the palace. He straightened his upper body, jumped out like a hungry tiger, and galloped away like a lightning bolt. She opened her mouth wide and her fangs were more than a meter long. They were as thick as an adult's arm and gleaming with sharp edges. With one bite, she could even bite open the steel plate, leaving a hole as big as a millstone. A fishy wind blew towards my face. At this time, Yu Ye turned sideways, revealing the psychic summoning circle hidden under his body. The slavery contract signed by Nato and Suzuki means that not only Suzuki can summon him, but also vice versa. And, more importantly, Suzuki can also be summoned with others. Psychic art. 4 figures had just appeared, and before they had time to see who they were, the white snake immortal's bloody mouth viciously bit them down. The white snake immortal looked at Yu Ye indifferently, originally wanting to say something. But the next moment, a look of horror suddenly flashed through immortal white snake's usually calm eyes. Bang! From the mouth of immortal white snake, a sound like the sound of golden drums suddenly erupted, deafening. The white snake immortal didn't know that he was in trouble, so he opened his mouth and spat out the 4 people he had just swallowed. Uchiha Itachi. Kisame. Haiden. Suzuki. The 4 of them had fishy mucus on their bodies and looked a little embarrassed, but none of them had any injuries. The 4 Uchiha Itachi looked at Yu Ye with resentment, and the faint look deep in their eyes made Yu Ye's skin crawl. Ahem. What's that? Yu Ye was a little embarrassed. After all, he asked someone to help him. As a result, he was swallowed by the enemy just after he summoned him. The 4 of them were so upset. If I say this is an accident, do you believe it? The corners of Uchiha Itachi's mouth twitched fiercely, and he turned his head away, obviously not believing it. Feijuan was carrying a strange-shaped weapon, like a sickle or a knife, with 3 blades, scarlet as blood. At first glance, you can tell that it is not a simple thing. Feijuan, who had a bad temper, first spitted at Yu Ye and raised his middle finger, then turned his head and looked at the white snake immortal not far away, cursing. It was this stinky snake that made me dirty, right? Feijuan took off his pants, urinated on the white snake immortal, and deliberately shook his little brother, saying with a humiliating tone. Come, little baby, come and drink my nutrient water. In an instant, the whole palace was silent, so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Yu Yi and others clearly felt that the temperature around them dropped a few degrees quickly, as if they were placed in an ice cellar, and a stream of creeping cold air filled the air. The White Snake Immortal had lived for so many years, but this was the first time she had seen someone dare to insult her like this. Blue veins protruded from her forehead, wriggling like a few green snakes. It happened so fast. The White Snake Immortal's tail suddenly emerged from under Feijuan's feet, and like a spiral drill, it unleashed an extremely ferocious 1000-year kill. Chapter 75. The chrysanthemums are broken, the ground is covered with wounds, the flowers have fallen and people are heartbroken. Ah! Haiden's lung-splitting screams echoed in the palace. The White Snake Immortal flicked his tail, and Haiden was shot backwards, and little blood flowers fell in the air. Haiden felt waves of severe pain coming from his lower body. His face was twisted and turned the color of pig liver. He was still in mid-air, clutching his buttocks and tears of pain flowed out. At this moment, there is only one lyric that can express Haiden's mood. What a painful realization this is. Nato's face looked strange, and he could tell at a glance what horrific torture Haiden had just suffered. But we don't dare to say it, and we don't dare to ask it either. Nato glanced at his teammates from the corner of his eyes, but saw Uchiha Itachi and Kisame looking calm and familiar with the world, and couldn't help but nodded. These two are still reliable. When Nato flew into the battle, Kisame let go of the hand holding his waist and thought to himself. It was so dangerous, I almost laughed out loud. When Kisame discovered that Uchiha Itachi had remained expressionless from beginning to end, he couldn't help but give a thumbs up in his heart and said to himself. As expected of Itachi, he is calm in the face of danger and has the air of a general. With this thought in mind, Kisame also threw himself into the battle. But Kisame didn't realize that the place where Uchiha Itachi was in his eyes was actually empty. It turned out that he had unknowingly fallen under Uchiha Itachi's illusion. Boom! In the midst of the chaos, an earth-shaking loud noise resounded through the sky. The floor, ceiling, and walls of the splendid palace shook violently, and countless smoke and dust fell from the earthquake. The White Snake Immortal was angry, and his huge size was revealed to the world for the first time. 80 meters, 90 meters, 100 meters. 200 meters. Just by raising her upper body upright, she knocked open huge cracks in the roof of the entire palace, and then shattered suddenly, with stone chips flying and gravel exploding. The majestic and domineering snake body stood upright, appearing with great impact. In the eyes of the world, a huge head, completely grey, with two golden snake pupils, like topaz, occupying almost half of the head. In the ferocious mouth, there is a row of sharp teeth, especially the two fangs, which are more than 1 meter long. A long snake letter is hesitating in the mouth, like a bloody horse. Hiss! Seeing the white snake sage who seemed to be crossing the sky and the earth in front of him, Haiden covered his buttocks, his eyes were shocked, he took a breath of air and said. Is this smelly snake so big? Even Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, who were well informed, could not help but look in astonishment when they faced this behemoth for the first time. In front of the astonishing size of the White Snake Immortal, Yu Yi's mere 100-meter-long snake body is simply a younger brother. The whole body of the White Snake Immortal is grey-white, with silvery light flowing around. The human-sized snake scales are covered with silvery luster all over the huge body. As the snake's body slowly squirms, it faintly reveals a kind of vigor that can easily crush even mountains. The feeling is shocking. As expected of an old monster that has survived since the days of the Sage of Six Paths. At this moment, Yu Yi's heart felt as if there was a stormy sea. Facing the existence in front of him who stood at the pinnacle of the ninja world, his heart trembled slightly, but at the same time he also had a burning ambition. One day, I can be this strong. Immortal White Snake's eyes were cold, and the ferocious aura permeated every inch of the space, like boiling water, making people feel like a real threat. You traitor from Longdi Cave. Do you know the consequences of doing this? If you are a real native of Longdi Cave, you will naturally feel ashamed when faced with the question from Immortal White Snake. It's a pity that Yu Ye is just an outsider occupying the magpie's nest and has no sense of belonging to Longdi Cave. Nato stepped back a little, letting Uchiha Itachi and Kisame stand in front of him to avoid being attacked by White Snake Sage, and then he smiled and said. Immortal, of course I know the consequences of doing this. Seeing the White Snake Immortal's eyes widening and his eyes seeming to choose someone to devour, Yuya raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth and said, "Immortal, are you very angry now? Come on, let me make a choice for you, single fight or group fight. Only children make choices." The White Snake Immortal didn't even care about Toba yet, and pounced on him ferociously. Rumble! Rumble! As the huge snake body of the White Snake Immortal squirmed, the entire valley shook violently, and the ground was like an earthquake, rising and falling violently. The terrifying aura was like a dark cloud, quickly approaching Yuya and others. The huge snake body of the White Snake Immortal is almost like a moving hill. Kisame formed a seal with his hands, raised a ferocious smile on his lips, and said, "I haven't tasted the taste of snake meat yet. I'm going to use you today to make it my snack." Water release. Great waterfall technique. Kisame pressed his hands on the ground, and the huge amount of chakra turned into raging waves, and the endless sea water turned into an upside-down Milky Way. The huge waves set off rushed to the top of the valley, rushing towards White Snake Sage like a wolf and a tiger, trying to kill her. Completely submerged. Wherever the waterfall passed, it hit the stone pillars blocking the road and shattered them instantly. However, facing the terrifying waves and tsunami, Immortal White Snake showed a playful expression on his face and said proudly, "A mere waterfall, you want to stop me? Ridiculous." The White Snake Immortal tried without slowing down, like a speeding aircraft carrier, crashing directly into the raging waterfall. A strong water pressure squeezed the White Snake Immortal from all directions, but it did not hurt her at all. Boom! The waterfall, like a wall of water, was directly crushed by the White Snake Immortal. The huge and ferocious snake head poked out from the splashing tide of water droplets, and then the slender and huge snake tail swung, tightly wrapping him in the horrified eyes of Kisame. The White Snake Immortal is 200 meters long, and the tail alone is more than 10 meters long. It is easy for her to roll up Kisame. The grey-white snake tail, with a bright silver line, slowly crawled, and the pentagonal snake scales opened and closed slightly, revealing Kisame's shark face and undisguised astonishment and fear. Kisame couldn't understand why the White Snake Immortal was so fast and so powerful. The strong stench of the giant python wafted into his nose. Kisame struggled desperately to break free from the snake's tail, but he was disappointed to find that it didn't move at all, and the snake's tail wrapped around him even tighter. Click! 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 The snake's tail slowly tightened, and the bones were constantly squeezed, making a series of creepy sounds. Kisame opened his pupils wide, his mind was blank, and he thought to himself, "Could it be that my life is over today?" Chapter 76. The huge snake tail of the White Snake Immortal is tightened little by little, with grey-white patterns and human-sized scales slowly moving, making people shudder just by looking at it. Even though Kisame had experienced hundreds of battles, he still had goosebumps at the moment. Could it be that my life is over today? Just when Kisame felt desperate, his breathing became rapid, and his vision began to blur. He saw a ray of light that was as if it was splitting the sky and the earth. Poof! Uchiha Itachi's eyes darkened. Susanoo waved his 10-fist sword, and it seemed as if he was cutting on the cowhide. He failed to break the scales on the White Snake Sage, but squeezed them and twisted them away. But the power contained in the 10-fist sword passed through the scales, making the White Snake Immortal feel the long-lost pain. Hiss! The White Snake Immortal was in pain and his eyes turned cold. "You succeeded in irritating me." An icy chill spread to every corner of the surrounding area. Yuya and others trembled all over, just like a basin of cold water poured from head to toe in winter. The cold feeling seemed to freeze the soul. Murderous look. That's right. The overwhelming murderous aura. Hiss! Hiss! The scarlet snake letter was exposed, and the huge snake body of the White Snake Immortal was slowly squirming. Click! 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 The ground could not withstand the crushing force of thousands of tons of weight, and Kisame was tightened by the snake's tail as if suffocated, and the sound of fractures continued. If Kisame hadn't been smart enough to immediately fuse with Samehada and have a physique comparable to that of a tailed beast, he would have died long ago. Of course, Kisame is just hanging on for dear life now, so he's not much better. The saliva of the White Snake Immortal dripped and turned into a corrosive river, carrying a strong fishy smell. The huge snake head rushed over, opening its bloody mouth, and a strong wind hit his face. A flash of fluctuation flashed in Uchiha Itachi's eyes, and Susanoo went straight forward without any fear. The two behemoths started fighting fiercely in this cave. The air vibrated, the earth shattered, cracks spread, and spread in all directions, causing dust in the sky, waves of earth overflowing, and the sound of wind. Among them, the worst one is Kisame. Kisame was tightly entangled by the snake tail of the white snake sage. The snake's body was extremely strong, invulnerable to weapons, water, and fire. Nato and Uchiha Itachi tried several times to rescue him, but ultimately failed. What's even more terrifying is that the white snake Senshi and Susanoo are fighting. The snake's tail whips wildly, like a steel whip, and the dancing shadows turn Kisame upside down. His body is turbulent, and he has a motion sickness like vomiting feeling stuck in his throat, making him want to vomit. When Nato watched the battle between White Snake Senshi and Susanoo, he had a sense of déjà vu as Atman battled a monster. At the same time, Yuya also shouted in his heart that he was lucky to have invited the help of the Akatsuki organization. With Yuyi's current strength, it was too difficult to fight against the White Snake Immortal, so he could only make a few sneak attacks on the outside of the battlefield. Boom! 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 The entire cave seemed to be washed away by a series of missiles. The surrounding rocks could not withstand the torture of the two giants. Every inch of the cave was torn apart and stone debris flew everywhere. This cave was built as a base camp by Immortal White Snake. It was originally extremely strong, but now it is shaky and about to collapse. Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Just as Yuya was nervously paying attention to the situation on the battlefield, a very discordant and wild laughter suddenly appeared in the cave. Where is the madman? Yuya suddenly turned his head and narrowed his huge snake eyes. However, they saw Haiden sitting dirtily on a pile of rubble in a place in the cave where no one noticed, holding a man-sized silver grey scale in his hand and laughing loudly. Yuyi's pupils suddenly shrank and became like needles. The scales in Haiden's hand had suddenly fallen off from the white snake immortal, and one corner of the pentagonal snake scales was lightly stained with blood. Haiden's eyes were bloodshot and cleft, and he stared at the white snake sage who was fighting in the distance with hatred. He smiled evilly and said, "Performing a sacrificial ritual with you as a sacrifice should be able to please the evil god, right?" Haiden used blood to draw a pattern on the ground, a formation of circles and triangles, emitting an evil scarlet light. After a while, his skin color turned black, with white bone-like marks on his skin. At the same time, Haiden used a sickle-like weapon to take the blood of the white snake immortal from the snake scales. He raised his head at a 45-degree angle and felt that he was indeed the protagonist of the world. The center of the world suddenly burst into laughter. "Stand up! I stain the sky with my blood!" There was no other audience except Yuya for such an explosive speech for the second time. Kisame was still entangled by the snake's tail, and he didn't know whether he was suppressing it or being angry. His face turned purple, and he had 10,000 words in his mind that he didn't know whether to take seriously or not. Uchiha Itachi was fully focused on dealing with the white snake sage and ignored the transparent little Haiden. Haiden looked around and found that he was the only one smiling on the spot, as if petrified, dumbfounded. "How come no one appreciates my speech?" "No. There is still one, but it is a giant white python." Haiden raised his head and looked at Nato affectionately, with tears in his eyes, and he just wanted to say, "Let's be each other's angels." Nato was immediately disgusted by Haiden's charming little eyes. He blinked and uttered, "Why are you wearing something like clothes?" "Haiden. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. The key is that Feiduan has a very strong brain. This must be snake language, it must be praising me for my wisdom and bravery, and my extraordinary temperament, right?" Thinking of this, Feijuan gave Yi a small affirmative look. "This is a good comrade." Suddenly, Feijuan was infinitely encouraged, as if he felt that the evil god in heaven showed him a gratified smile. Feijuan did not hesitate, took out a handful of black hair from his clothes, pointed it at his heart, and stabbed it. Curse! Death by blood! It can be called the most unsolvable and shameless curse in the entire ninja world. Once it is launched, of course there is no earth shaking, no ghosts and gods, only the hissing of the white snake immortal before his death. Hiss! In the hissing sound that resounded through the world, the white snake immortal's huge snake body as big as a mountain collapsed. When death was imminent, the huge pupils that occupied half of the head of the white snake immortal opened wide, revealing deep unwillingness and confusion. She will not rest in peace after being killed by Feiduan, a street idiot. At this time, the system prompt sounded in Yuyi's ears. Longdi Cave Domination Mission. Mission Description: as the infinite snake of the future, How can you let others bully you? Open your bloody mouth, show your fangs, and start conquering Longdi Cave to become the overlord of Longdi Cave. 4th stage mission, kill the White Snake Immortal, completely control Longdi Cave, and become the real overlord of Longdi Cave. Completed. Mission reward, 1 diamond treasure box, 1 star treasure box, 1 king treasure box. Chapter 77. Boom boom. The huge snake body of the White Snake Immortal collapsed with a bang. Yu Yi suppressed the ecstasy of completing the task and came to her. However, the White Snake Immortal only had some scars on her body, and there was no sign of serious injury at all. It can be seen that she was more than enough to deal with Itachi's Susanoo. Yu Yi pulled open the White Snake Immortal's tightly bound tail and rescued the miserable Kisame. To Yu Yi's surprise, Kisame immediately found an empty corner after being freed. Kisame couldn't help it and wanted to vomit. With Kisame's strong physique, he ended up like this. It is conceivable what he had just experienced. Taking his attention away from Kisame, Yu Yi tried to bite the White Snake Immortal's extremely hard scales. With a crunch, he almost broke his teeth. This scale seemed to be forged from pure gold, and it was so solid. There was no other way. Yu Yi couldn't bite, so he had to open his bloody mouth, opening it 180 degrees upwards to the limit, and stuffed the White Snake Immortal into his stomach. With his powerful digestive ability, he digested her completely. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring the White Snake Immortal and obtaining 233 points of devouring evolution gene. Ignoring the terrible number, the reward for killing the White Snake Immortal is obvious. Breaking through 1 million devouring evolution genes is definitely worth the return ticket. Then, Yu Yi began a new round of evolution. In the astonished eyes of Uchiha Itachi and others, Yu Yi's huge snake body suddenly stretched out, starting from 100 meters, and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a minute, it grew to 120 meters. The snake body, which was originally as thick as 9 people hugging together, became bigger again, and 10 people could barely hug it together. As for Yu Yi's weight, hundreds of tons increased by dozens of tons, which can basically be ignored. After all, there is no weighing tool for testing. It can be said that from the perspective of body shape, Yu Yi is basically the same as the original 10,000 snake. Yu Yi looked at his changed body and nodded with satisfaction. Then, Yu Yi opened the system personal information column. System goal, help the host evolve into the 10,000 world's infinite snake. Current world, Naruto. Host, Yu Yi. Breed, White Python. Age, under 1 year old, ultimate form. Lifespan, 100 years. Devouring evolution gene, 3333/62,000. Level, LV620. Language, Snake language, Human language, only for Naruto. Talent, Primary devouring, God level fire affinity, Intermediate earth affinity. Ability, Strengthen fangs, Strengthen skin, Primary regeneration. Comprehensive evaluation, leap to become a senior cage level strongman. You should have a place in the ninja world. The 10,000 world's infinite snake has just begun. Follow the footsteps of the system and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. Senior cage level strongman. Now, with the power contained in Yu Yi's body and the innate abilities he has mastered, if he faces Wan Shi again, he doesn't need a long-term war of attrition, and can kill Wan Shi directly. The most exaggerated thing is that the level jumped from LV230 to LV620, which is a big increase. Yu Yi has a feeling that he has almost touched the ceiling of evolution. If nothing unexpected happens, after reaching LV999 and reaching the super ultimate body, it will be difficult to make any progress. Just as Yu Yi was thinking secretly, the cracks in the rock above his head expanded to a certain critical point. Crack! 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 A burst of debris fell down, and the rock was as soft as loose flour, and huge rocks rolled down one after another. The cave is about to collapse. It is a miracle that this cave can last so long. Yu Yi and others quickly collected their moods and flew out of the cave like flying. The night sky full of stars outside came into view. Not long after they came out, the cave behind them banged, and a large number of rolling rocks fell, directly blocking the entrance. At this time, 2 beautiful figures came from a distance. When they saw the cave collapse, they immediately ran over anxiously as if they had lost their parents. These 2 people were similar to Tian Xin Shenji, both of them had beautiful faces and were dressed in green palace clothes. They were one of the elders of Longdi Cave, named Ikajimeji and Tsujin Shenji, and they were both the right-hand men of the White Snake Immortal. Before that, these two Shenji went to the junction of the ninja realm in Longdi Cave to preside over the test of human beings entering Longdi Cave. Of course, according to the tradition of Longdi Cave for hundreds and thousands of years, none of these humans who came to take the test successfully passed the test, and all entered the stomachs of these two Shenji. When the two goddesses saw Yuyi and Uchiha Itachi and his companions, Ichikashi Majima shouted angrily. "How dare you collude with humans outside, Yuyi?" As for the other goddess, Suzu, she was obviously smarter than her companions. Seeing that the situation was not good, she immediately turned around and wanted to escape. Unfortunately, the people in front of them were all notorious figures in the ninja world. Without their approval, how could they escape? Suzu Shimeji's eyes were dull, and she stood there stupidly, even drooling from the corners of her mouth. It was obvious that she was pulled into the illusion by Uchiha Itachi. As for Ichikashi Majima, who had just questioned angrily, before she could react, she was beheaded by Kisame holding same hata directly. The process was simple and rough to the extreme. It is obvious that Kisame had been playing a supporting role throughout the whole process and took out his anger on the other party. When Uchiha Itachi withdrew his illusion and Princess Suzu regained consciousness, she saw a snake and 4 persons surrounding her with ill intentions. Tuanjin goddess screamed yet, protected her chest with her arms, her face turned red, and she said shyly. "What do you want to do?" The 4 Uchiha Itachis were a little embarrassed. As for such a big reaction, no matter how strong their taste is, they wouldn't be so strong that they would have an indescribable relationship with a snake, right? The 4 Uchiha Itachi looked at Nato, their meaning was obvious. "It's you who told us to be merciful, and it's up to you to clean up this mess." Under their gaze, Yu Yi's huge flat head was lowered, and his gaze fell on Tuanjin Shenji with real eyes. Every word seemed to hit the other person's heart. "Want to live, or do you want to die?" Tuanjin goddess was obviously much more tactful, otherwise she would not have thought of running away immediately. Her knees softened, and she knelt on the ground without restraint, with tears in her eyes. I felt pity for him and cried. "Please spare my life, sir." A flash of light burst out from Nato's lantern-sized snake eyes. Just when Uchiha Itachi and others thought that Nato was going to kidnap the beautiful snake in front of him and do something he liked, Nato spoke again. "Very good, if you want to survive, I don't care what means you use, within 3 days, go and summon all the big snakes in Longdi Cave here." Noticing the twinkling eyes of Princess Tuanjin, Yu Ye immediately added. "Don't try to make any small moves, I will send Uchiha Itachi to follow you." Princess Tuanjin glanced at Yu Ye in awe, and then lowered her head as if resigned. As commanded. After sending the other party away, Yu Ye finally had time to check the rewards for completing the task. Chapter 78. After finishing the work at hand, Yu Ye found an excuse to separate from Kisame and the others and found a hidden place alone. Opening the treasure chest is related to Yu Ye's deepest secret. Even Suzuki, who signed a slavery contract, is not qualified to know. Yu Ye took out the platinum treasure chest, the star treasure chest, and the king treasure chest one by one. Looking at their glittering appearance, he began to pray silently in his heart. "Believe in yourself, you can do it." That's what he said, but why is his tone so empty? As usual, starting with the low-level treasure chest, Yu Ye took the lead in opening the platinum treasure chest. The treasure light appeared. "Very good, this time it's a good start." Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the ability, Steel Skin. Steel Skin, invulnerable to swords and guns, and invulnerable to water and fire. Seeing this ability, Yu Ye's eyes flashed with a trace of thought. The scales of the White Snake Immortal were as hard as gold and stone before. I'm afraid he has a similar ability. Since participating in the battle of the shadow-level strongmen, Yu Ye has felt that his strength is insufficient. Now that he has obtained the Steel Skin, at least his ability to save his life will be greatly enhanced in the future. Yu Ye looked down and saw that the white snake scales on his body were flowing with metallic color under the bright moonlight, sparkling and shining, which was very beautiful. I'm lucky today. Thinking so, Yu Ye opened the Star Glory treasure box with a good mood. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the women's clothing of the Goddess of Death. The women's clothing of the Goddess of Death, from the Marvel world, tailored by the most outstanding designer in the multiverse, except that the charm is greatly increased after wearing it, there is no additional ability. The whisper of the goddess of death, little thief, the incident of you stealing my leggings last time has happened. God stole your leggings. Yu Yi suddenly felt that it was not good, and always felt that he was destined to be alone and was targeted by the goddess of death in the Marvel world. The goddess of death may be unfamiliar to everyone, but you must have heard of the name of Thanos, right? Thanos can kill half of the life in the multiverse with a snap of his fingers, but in front of the goddess of death, he is just a younger brother. What did I say just now? I am lucky today. I fell. Yu Yi looked at the dress in front of him with a serious look. The tube top design is very feminine, and the long sleeve design makes the overall look not too exposed. The fabric of sensitive parts is thickened, so there is no need to worry about exposure. The hollowing of the sleeves is just right, which is cool and just reflects the beauty of the female figure. It is impossible to wear women's clothes, and it is impossible to wear women's clothes in this life. What's more, this is the women's clothes of the goddess of death in the Marvel world. As usual, Yu Yi threw the dress to the ground, opened his mouth and spit, and a fist-sized fireball attached to it, burning it clean. The goddess of death is a notorious existence in the entire multiverse. Being targeted by this big man, Yu Yi's originally relaxed heart tightened again. The ancients said that only villains and women are difficult to raise. The goddess of death in the Marvel world is a petty woman, and her heart is as thin as a needle. Yu Yi is remembered by such a big shot. Even if he is far away, he will probably be sought revenge by her. Thinking that he has inexplicably offended such a big shot, Yu Yi suddenly felt sad. But this thought flashed, and then aroused Yu Yi's desire to survive, and a trace of cruelty flashed in his eyes. It seems that I have to become stronger. As long as I become incomparably powerful, even if the goddess of death comes, I have to kneel down and sing conquer. Thinking of this, Yu Yi opened the last one, which is the king's treasure box. In an instant, Yu Yi seemed to see the sky falling. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, Samadhi True Fire. It turned out to be Samadhi True Fire. The first Samadhi begins in the Sea of Qi, called the People's Fire, and its power is like the fire in the wood. The second Samadhi begins in the kidney, called the Minister's Fire, and its power is like the fire in the stone. The Samadhi is in the heart, called the King's Fire, and its power reaches the air fire. This Samadhi burns the body, like a ulcer attached to the bone, and ordinary water cannot extinguish it. This time, Yu Yi is a little restless, always feeling that the goddess of luck has lifted her skirt for him today. Everyone should be familiar with Samadhi True Fire. In Journey to the West, Red Boy's innate magical power was born with Samadhi True Fire. He became a little devil at a young age, stirring up the local demons and dogs. The vast world has countless abilities. Among them, the innate ability of fire exists in many worlds, such as the famous strange fire in Fight's Break sphere. All these flames can be divided into several types. Beast fire, earth fire, ordinary fire, and divine fire. The first three types of flames are all limited in potential, while the divine fire is different and has unlimited possibilities. The different fire in Fight's Break sphere is a different kind, with great power in one body, from ordinary to extraordinary, and then against the sky to become a divine fire, with extraordinary potential. Samadhi True Fire is one of the divine fires, but it is the bottom existence. However, Yu Yi was already very satisfied. After all, this time his luck exploded. Yu Yi opened his mouth and spit out a fist-sized fireball in front of him. Yu Yi stared at the fireball in front of him. It looked the same as before, but if you look closely, you will find that the flame temperature is restrained, and the edge is faintly platinum. Yu Yi's mind moved, and the fireball condensed by the Samadhi True Fire fell on a big tree not far away. Hey! The fireball just touched the tree and instantly ignited it. In the blink of an eye, the tree was burned to ashes. If it was an ordinary fireball, it would probably just break the tree and then slowly burn, which would not be as clean and neat as the Samadhi True Fire. So strong! Yu Yi looked at the charred ground with burning eyes, and then retracted his gaze to look at his personal information after the system was updated. System goal: help the host evolve into the infinite snake of all worlds. Current world: Naruto. Host: Yu Yi. Species: White Python. Age: under 1 year old, ultimate form. Lifespan: 100 years. Devouring evolution gene: 3333/62000. Level: LV620. Language: Snake language, human language, only for Naruto. Talents: Primary Devouring, Samadhi True Fire, Intermediate Earth Affinity. Abilities: Strengthened Fangs, Iron Skin, Primary Regeneration. Comprehensive Evaluation: even the top cage level strongmen dare not touch your Samadhi True Fire, the infinite snake of 10,000 worlds has just begun. Follow the system's footsteps and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. In talent, Samadhi True Fire replaced the God level Fire Affinity. In ability, Iron Skin replaced Strengthened Skin. This made Yu Yi think involuntarily, could it be that the ability he had obtained before was just a prerequisite? However, Yu Yi now has no way to think deeply. Because the system has a new task. Chapter 79. Congratulations to the host for triggering the hidden mission, my fate is in my own hands. Rare. Third stage mission, dominate the ninja world. Mission description: as the infinite snake of the world, it is time to show off your power in the world and let the fear you bring be deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone in this world. Build your own power. The greater the influence of the power, the more important the original characters you subdue or kill, and the higher the score. Mission reward: depends on the score when the task is completed. Dominate the ninja world? And also build your own power? Yu Yi was slightly shocked and his eyes showed deep thought. This mission has several difficulties. First, Yu Yi must be outstanding, at least a senior cage. Second, it takes time and effort to build a power, and it is not a one-day job. Finally, you have to try your best to subdue or kill the famous characters in the original. If it were before, Yu Yi would not have had much confidence to establish his own power in the huge ninja world without obtaining the Samadhi True Fire. But now it is different. Yu Yi has colluded with the Akatsuki organization, attacked and killed the White Snake Immortal, and will soon control the entire Ryokai cave, with thousands of snake-summoned beasts. Of course, this is far from enough. Relying solely on those snakes with only primitive instincts is not enough to dominate the entire ninja world. Only by absorbing the talents of the ninja world can the skeleton of the entire force be built. So, what shortcut is there? That is to poach people. Yu Yi thought to himself that Uchiha Itachi would definitely stand on his side because of Sasuke. As long as he appealed to his emotions and reasoned with him, Uchiha Itachi would definitely jump to his own force. So, in the Akatsuki organization, which other personnel can be won over? In addition to the Akatsuki organization, there are still large and small organizations in the ninja world, such as the Sound Village established by Orochimaru. Although Orochimaru has been killed by Yu Yi, he has left behind a large number of talents in the branch bases in various places. Yu Yi felt a little headache. It was easy for him to go on a killing spree, but it was very problematic to be the head of a force. Yu Yi had a vague guess: what is the deep meaning of this series of tasks issued by the system? As the name suggests, the infinite snake of the world will definitely travel to other worlds in the future. But if he arrives in an unknown and unfamiliar world in the future, without the advantage of the plot, he will be in the dark. If he can send his subordinates to explore the new world, he can reduce the degree of danger. Thinking of this, Yu Yi's eyes gradually became clear. Time flies. Soon, 3 days passed. On this day, in Longdi Dongyan, the streets were empty, and dense snakes covered the sky. Snakes of different colors wriggled their bodies to form a vast ocean. Tuanjin Shenji stood in awe, and in front of her was Yu Yi's huge snake body. Tuanjin Shenji lowered her head, not even daring to look at Yu Yi with her peripheral vision. In the past few days, in addition to summoning the snake group according to Yu Yi's instructions, she has also learned the truth about the death of the White Snake Immortal. Everything started with Yu Yi's hands in front of her. Whether it was strength or skill, she was deeply frightened. Tuanjin Shenji said timidly. "My lord, I have completed your task perfectly." "Yes." Yu Yi raised his snake head high and did not comment. Looking over, there were snakes within a radius of 100 miles. The snakes of the entire Longdi cave gathered here. The fishy and foul smell unique to snakes rushed into the sky like a wolf smoke. And the big snake at the head of the snake group was blue all over, 100 meters long, and the palm-sized diamond-shaped scales flowed with gorgeous colors in the sun. It was the green snake. At this moment, the green snake also raised its head and stared at Yu Yi in a rebellious manner, speaking for itself and the entire group of snakes, saying, "Why did you summon us here?" Yu Yi's lantern-sized snake pupils burst into a light that was difficult to look at directly, and his voice resounded through the sky, saying, "From today on, I am your king." As soon as these words came out, it was like a bolt from the blue. The entire group of snakes was boiling, and there was a commotion, and the hissing sounds of mutual communication were endless. The green snake's eyes turned cold. It had always been neutral in Longdi Cave. Before coming here, it had clearly noticed that there had been a big change in Longdi Cave recently, but it never thought that someone would want to steal the ruling power of Longdi Cave. Could it be that the white snake immortal? Uchiha Itachi and others saw the noisy scene, which was 100 times more noisy than the vegetable market, and frowned. They had wasted too much time in Longdi Cave and were unwilling to delay any longer. Uchiha Itachi and the others took a step forward together, releasing terrifying murderous intent. Boom! It was like a hurricane sweeping over, with murderous intent surging, cold and icy, like a basin of cold water directly poured over the heads of the noisy snakes, directly extinguishing the noise. All was silent. The green snake was horrified, thinking, "How is this possible? This group of humans actually brought me a threat of death." Especially when the green snake saw that this group of powerful humans was actually led by the white giant python in front of him, he was even more shocked and suspicious. Who is this Yu Yi, and why can he make these humans obey his orders? Why have I never heard of Yu Yi before? The green snake has been living in a cave, and Yu Yi has been rising for a short time. In less than half a year, he has slaughtered thousands of snakes and killed immortals. No one would believe it if he told others about it. Yu Yi's eyes were cold, and a hint of murderous intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. If the green snake persisted, he would not mind killing it. "Do you have any objections?" Under the pressure of Yu Yi's eyes, which were as real as substance, the green snake felt cold in his heart. He knew that if he did not express his position and stand in line today, he would probably die here today. The green snake opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he glanced at the corner of his eyes, he saw that the group of humans showed an eager expression, as if they were looking forward to chopping it to death, and suddenly felt like crying but had no tears. This group of humans is so scary. The green snake immediately put away the little thoughts in its heart, its unruly eyes drooped, and its huge snake head even lowered to the ground under Yu Yi, exposing itself to Yu Yi's attack range to express its pious obedience, saying, "I have no objection." Turning Jin Shenji originally thought that she could be released as long as she summoned the snakes, but now it seems that it is particularly bad. However, she is also quite smart, kneeling down gracefully, and timidly said, "I have no objection either." The former right-hand men of the green snake and the white snake fairy all surrendered to Yu Yi, and the other unknown big snakes naturally did not dare to disobey and surrendered one after another. In this way, Yu Yi officially ruled Longdi Cave and laid the foundation for his power. Chapter 80. 2 years later. Time flies like an arrow, and the sun and moon fly like a shuttle. Since Yu Yi took control of the entire Longdi Cave, he began to blast troops to encourage the snakes to reproduce. Snakes are oviparous creatures, and they usually lay eggs in the summer and autumn. Different snake species lay different numbers of eggs, usually about 4 to 19. It only takes about 2 to 3 years to mature and form a considerable force. It is a good kind of snake. Cannon fodder resources used. In just 2 years, the number of snakes in Longdi Cave has doubled. In valleys, streams, woods, and deserts, little snakes can be seen squirming everywhere, eating everything in sight. One of the consequences of the sudden increase in the number of snakes is that food in Longdi Cave has begun to be scarce, and many snakes have begun to kill each other just to stay full. It is foreseeable that if this situation continues, the resources of the entire Longdi Cave will be eaten up by the snakes, and then the countdown to self-destruction will begin. Fortunately, all this was within Yu Yi's expectations. Suzuki was walking on the road to the Holy Land with 3 people. These 3 people were Suijitsu, and Yugo. This was 2 years ago. Yu Yi felt that there was a shortage of people to form a force, so he ordered him to look for talents from the sub-base of Sound Ninja Village. In addition to these 3 people, there were other people who joined, but they were all not well known. Ninja, as a peripheral member. It's a pity that Kimimaro passed away due to physical collapse before Suzuki could recruit him. Every time Nato thought about it, he secretly lamented the loss of a general. As a group of people walked on the road paved with blue stones, they could vaguely see the majestic palaces on the top of the mountain, which seemed to be connected to the entire mountain and stretched as far as the eye could see. There is the headquarters of the force founded by Yu Yi, which is called a holy place by his subordinates. The 4 Suzukis came to the top of the mountain. There were many people coming and going around them. They were all dressed in brocade clothes, with black as the base and gold trim. The organization's logo was embroidered on the left chest, a white snake with snake tails connected. Seeing Suzuki and others, people on the road paid attention and saluted to show respect. Suzuki looked indifferent and walked right past them without even saying hello. These people were not angry, as if they were used to it and were not surprised. After all, Suzuki was the popular person in front of the Lord and was not something peripheral members like them could offend. Suzuki and his party went straight into the largest and most luxurious palace. When they pushed the door open, they saw a huge white python, a tiger, and a dragon coiled on the ground. Its whole body was silver white, glowing with a metallic color, and the silver light was flowing and sparkling. Flash! Xiang Lu, Zhongwu, and Gui Deng Shui Yu, the three of them, walked forward cautiously without daring to breathe since they entered the door. You are here. A voice like a bell echoed in the palace, two giant eyes like lanterns were lowered, Yu Ye snorted from his nose, and his eyes fell on the four people with real eyes. In an instant, the three of them felt a tremendous pressure coming down, and they bowed down involuntarily. Only Suzuki, as if nothing had happened, was still proud, standing like a spear on the ground. Suzuki cupped his hands and said respectfully, "My lord, the Akatsuki organization asked me to send news. They hope that you will abide by the agreement of the alliance, take action to capture the eight-tailed gypsy, and attack Konoha village together at the agreed time." Yu Ye's eyes moved and he secretly said, "It's finally here." Yu Ye said and said, "The 100 people who have the blood inheritance limit that Pain promised me to collect are all ready." Suzuki nodded and said, "They have all been collected. Pain asked me to tell you that as long as you abide by the covenant, the 100 people will be handed over to you after the mission is over. Is this preventing me from working hard?" Yu Ye sneered in his heart, "Tiandao Pain, oh no, it should be said that Nagato is not good at this. He always cares about some things and lacks a little bit of the courage to be a hero. Of course, if Yu Ye was led by the Akatsuki organization, it would not be Yu Ye. Didn't Nagato want NATO's help in capturing the eight-tailed ogre? Then Yu Ye took advantage of the situation and pushed Union Village away. Dang dang dang. Dang dang dang. Dang dang dang. The sky above Longdi Cave echoed with the ringing bells. This was set by Yu Ye. Whenever there was an emergency, he would use this to summon powerful people to come. Ta ta ta. Ta ta ta. Bursts of hurried footsteps came from afar, and a ninja dressed in black brocade came from all directions to the main hall of the Holy Land. When they arrived one by one, they lined up in a neat formation, square and square, with heads held high in high spirits. Each of them opened their eyes wide and looked at the white giant python entrenched on the throne with bright eyes. With awe and fervent worship. Many of them were prisoners that Orochimaru imprisoned in the base and conducted brutal experiments on. It was Yu Ye who rescued them from the dark prison, gave them a new life in their humble lives, and allowed them to see the sun of tomorrow again. In their eyes, Yu Ye is their savior, the one they can repay with their lives. There is also a small number of people who come from the small ninja village, a small country caught in the middle of a big country. Because the mission resources were taken away by the big ninja village, they had no choice but to take refuge under NATO's door. Rumble! Rumble! As the ground shook, large snakes of more than 10 meters or tens of meters, headed by a green snake, snaked and crawled towards them. They also formed a square formation, respectfully waiting for Yu Ye's orders. Yu Ye looked down at the people and snakes below with a sharp gaze, and his heart was full of excitement. This is the power that belongs to him. Gentlemen, are you eager for war? Yu Ye's voice was as loud as a bell, attracting the attention of everyone present. Many people are unfamiliar with war, after all, it has been many years since the last Ninja World War. The crowd was a little agitated, but soon calmed down. Yu Ye nodded with satisfaction. To put it bluntly, these ninjas under his command are a group of desperate criminals. Rather than being afraid of war, they are more afraid of him. Gentlemen, I long for war, a war like hell. I long for a cold and ruthless war, a war that goes beyond the extremes of iron, blood, cold wind, thunder, and flames, a war that kills all enemies and exterminates enemy chieftains, like a storm. War! 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 Let's wake up those idiots who occupy high-quality resources and indulge in peace. Pull them by their hair, pull them out, let them open their eyes and remember the past, let them remember the fear they once tasted. Let them remember our terrifying figure, and let our evil name be engraved in the depths of those idiots' souls. Gentlemen! Let's create hell together. Send troops. Target the hidden cloud village.